And get started as soon as I get the thumbs up. Got him. Thank you for joining us tonight at our City Council meeting. We will go ahead and get started. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Adamson.
Here.
Ray.
Here.
Cheatham.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lurick.
Here.
Manon.
Here.
Glad.
Here. Thank you. We will go ahead and jump to agenda item number 2. Oh, no. Yeah, agenda item number 2. We'll have a Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. After which, if you would remain standing for an invocation which will be offered by Pastor Scott Sampson from Rocky Mountain Ministries. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. He's coming up.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you have given to us, a beautiful day. We thank you for our great nation, and we thank you for our good city. And today, Lord, as we have gathered, there is business to take care of. We ask for your wisdom. We ask, Lord, that you would speak to us, guide and direct us, guide our leaders and the people, that we wouldn't have a spirit of fear, but a spirit of confidence and knowing that you are guiding us to do the right things. And Father, we ask for your guidance to us. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. I know. They would be. We'll move on to agenda item number 3 is a consent agenda. The following business items may be approved by a motion and a vote. If any member of the council so desires, any matter listed can be moved to a separate agenda item. A, Treasurer's Report. Council may wish to consider the Treasurer's Report for November showing cash and investments as of November 30, 2018. Good evening, Joyce.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Joyce Stroshine, Chief Financial Officer for the city. Tonight I'm presenting the Treasurer's Report for the month of November. Total cash and cash equivalents represent 90% of the city's monies, totaling $43,322,803. Total long-term investments represent 10% of the city's monies, totaling $4,656,819. For a total cash equivalents, and long-term investments of $47,979,622. This amount is down $1,332,554 for the month of November. On page 2 of the report, I've highlighted a couple of key receipts for the month. Cable franchise fees, $48,449. This number is down 7.95% from fiscal year 17. Transit grant federal, $95,616. The remaining section details the net change in cash and long-term investments for the month. On page 3 is the report on the trust funds. Total cash equivalents, $1,121,233. Total long-term investments, $3,972,600. For a total cash equivalents, and long-term investments, $6,093,333. Total cash receipts for the month, $31,826. Total cash disbursements for the month, $55,025. The net change in long-term investments was a decrease of $7,184 for an overall decrease of $30,382 to the trust funds. On page 4 of the report, I list all the funds and their respective net change and their cash balances for the month of November, at the end of November. So I've highlighted the general fund. At the end of November, the general fund was at $6,711,626. This was a net decrease of $2,049,496 for the month. On page 5 of the report is discussion and analysis for your review. On page 6 of the report, I present to you the 5-year trend on cash balances. And you will note there are 2 funds with negative balances, the Transit Urban Fund and the CDBG Fund. These programs are grant reimbursement programs, and so therefore you have to expend and then be reimbursed. So they have pending grant receivables to come in to cover those negative balances. This again points out a very strong, healthy cash position in the city.
Any questions for Joyce, Council? Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Agenda item B, Community Development Block Grant CDBG Advisory Committee reappointment. Council may wish to confirm the reappointments of Stephanie Heaton and Brenda Pollard to continue their service as members of the CDBG Advisory Committee. Both terms will begin January 1, 2019 and will expire January 1, 2022. C, Construction Board of Appeals and review appointments. Council may wish to confirm the reappointment of Ted Booth and Richard Lehman and Richard Nielsen to continue their service as a member of the Construction Board of Appeals. The review. All terms will begin December 31, 2018 and will expire December 31, 2020. D, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board reappointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's reappointment of David Dorn to continue his service as a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Mr. Dorn's term will begin January 9, 2019 and will expire January 9, 2021. E, 2018 Annual Road and Street Financial Report. Council may wish to approve the 2018 Road and Street Financial Report. The report accounts for the city's use of state highway user dollars during the past fiscal year to the Idaho State Controller as reviewed by law, or required by law. F, Idaho State Historic Preservation Office Certified Local Government Grant. That's a heck of a title. Council may wish to authorize submission of the fiscal year 2019-2020 Certified Local Government Grant application to the Idaho State Historic Preservation Office. This year's application is in the amount of $7,500. The work program for this year includes a survey of the Bonneville neighborhood to be included in the National Register of Historic Places. The council may wish to authorize the mayor's signature on the grant contract if awarded and any related subcontracts or documents subject to legal department review.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President Johnston.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Johnston and a second by Cheatham. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Johnston.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Lurick.
Yes.
Manani.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 4 is communication and proclamations. We do not have any proclamations. I typically like to point out some scouts, but I'm not seeing any out there, and so
Extra seating over there.
and if you're standing and you'd like to sit down, we do have a few extra seats over here if you'd like to come over and do that. Looks like you're okay. All right. Yeah, it might be a minute, so. If you decide you want to sit down, go ahead and walk over. There's some seats over here. We'll move on to agenda item 5 is the calendar review. Council may wish to take this opportunity to inform other council members of upcoming meetings and events that should be called to their attention. On January 3 at 5:30 will be agenda clarification meeting. January 3 at 6 p.m. will be a regular city council meeting. January 10 at 9 a.m. will be a work session. Other events, city offices will be closed December 25 to observe Christmas holiday and January 1 to observe the New Year Day holiday. Garbage and recycle pickups will be delayed by 1 day. Tuesday pickups will be on Wednesday, etc. December 26th through 31st, special pickup for Christmas overflow. Bags or boxes of extra holiday wrapping will be picked up the same day as the scheduled pickup. December 26th through January 9, Christmas tree collection sites. Boxes will be provided at City Hall, Rainy Park on South Arthur, the Sister City Park entrance on Pocatello Creek Road for Christmas tree disposal. Trees will be chipped and used in landscaping projects. Please be sure to remove all strings and wires and other objects to avoid damaging the city's wood chipping equipment. The Marshall Public Library has shortened service hours in December. The hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Regular hours will return on January 2nd. Community Recreation Center hours on December 24, Christmas Eve, and December 31, New Year's Eve, will be 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Community Recreation Center will be closed on December 25th, Christmas Day, and January 1, New Year's Eve Day, or New Year's Day. Okay. We will move on to, I might add also, it looks like we have a lot of people here. I'm assuming you're interested in commenting on agenda item 9. You're welcome to comment on number 6 if you would like to, but just remember we do have 2 different public hearings. And so if you're here for one particular, you don't want to jump up here and then have to run back there so you can sit down. So please pay attention. When you do come and sign up, or to speak, we will have a sign-up sheet here. We'd like you to write your name and address on. Agenda item number 6, public hearing, proposed community development block grant CDBG program year 2019 annual action plan. This time has been set aside for council to receive public comments on the proposed community development block grant CDBG program year 2019 annual action plan. The CDBG Advisory Committee recently completed its annual grant application process, concluding with a recommendation of approval at their meeting on November 13, 2018. A 30-day comment period began November 20, 2018 and concludes December 20, 2018. Following the public hearing, the council may wish to endorse or modify the Advisory Committee's recommendations and authorize submissions, including any public comments of the program year 2019 action plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. The council may also wish to authorize the mayor's signature on all requested contract documents subject to legal department review with HUD and any subrecipients or contracts. I declare the public hearing open. Carl, or Adam?
Adam, yeah.
Adam.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Adam Lane, CDBG Program Manager for the City of Pocatello. As described by the Mayor, this hearing is the oral comment opportunity for the action plan that has been recommended by the CDBG Advisory Committee for Pocatello's 23rd year as an entitlement city. The action plan was developed assuming the same allocation as the current program year of $447,315. However, the actual amount will not be known until the federal budget is passed. The CDBG Advisory Committee has recommended a list of conditions that allows adjustments up to 25%, helping us to avoid a formal amendment process in the future. Advisory Committee members and CDBG staff have reviewed all applications for funding to determine compliance with HUD regulations and the city's consolidated plan. The anticipated funding allows for the approval of all subrecipient projects as well as full funding for the city's renewal program. This is a well-balanced plan addressing the highest priority needs of the community as identified in the city's 5-year consolidated plan. The activities to be carried out within the action plan are quality investments into our community. These investments will not only address critical needs related to safe and healthy affordable housing, but will also help local small businesses grow, provide new workforce training opportunities, and help protect those within our community with special needs. The memo in your packet outlines the committee's recommendations and is shown in the far right column on the spreadsheet. Copies of the recommendations were provided to all applicants and have been available for review at the Marshall Library, NeighborWorks Pocatello, Life Inc., Housing Alliance and Community Partnerships, here at City Hall and on the city's website. A 30-day comment period began Tuesday, November 20th and concluded on December 20th. No written comments have been received. Following tonight's hearing, the council may wish to accept or amend the committee's funding recommendation and authorize the plan submission to HUD, as well as authorizing the mayor's signature on all contract documents subject to legal department review with HUD and any subrecipients or subcontractors. That completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Any questions, Council? Council President Johnston?
How does this presentation compare with what we've done in the past?
It's very, very similar projects and activities are going to be carried out within this action plan.
Anything new?
The only thing that would be out of the ordinary is that we're providing funding to Aid for Friends for their new facility for architectural and engineering services.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Adam? Adam, you mentioned that you had no other correspondence.
No comments have been received.
Have we received any in the clerk's office?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I would entertain any testimony of those supporting the application. Any uncommitted to the application? Any opposed to the application? Okay, I don't know if you have anything else to say. You've got, okay, then I declare the public hearing closed. Council decides before you. How do you wish to proceed?
Get back to the right page. Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Bray.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the proposed community development block grant for program year 2019, and that we authorize the mayor's signature on all requisite documents subject to legal department review.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bray and a second by Manon. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 7, Superior Maintenance Contract Renewal, IT. Council may wish to consider a request from Information Technologies IT staff to approve a 5-year renewal of the maintenance contract with Superior for the city's enterprise resource planning ERP platform, subject to legal department review. The contract includes migration of ERP to Superior's cloud-based infrastructure, disaster recovery, and testing environment. Startup fee will be $5,000 and an annual access fee of $126,676. Funds are available in IT's 2019 fiscal year budget.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President Johnston.
I move that we approve the Superior Maintenance Contract renewal and authorize you to sign subject to legal review.
Second.
We have a motion by Johnston and a second by Cheatham. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Johnston,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Manon.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8 is discussion items. We have no.
Sorry, sir. Oops. No one has signed up.
We have no one that has signed up for discussion items, and so we will move on to agenda item 9. Public hearing rezone by contract 1200 block of Pershing Avenue. This time has been set aside for council to hear comments from the public regarding a request by Grace Lutheran Church, represented by Jonathan Dinger, for rezone by contract for the property located at the 1200 block of Pershing Avenue. The property is located in a residential medium-density single-family zoning district, and the request is to rezone by contract to residential high density to allow for greater density associated with the supervised group living facility. At their public hearing held on November 14, 2018, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with a vote of 4-2. I declare the public hearing open. Before we get too far into this, though, I've asked our attorney if he would tell us exactly what are our parameters? What are we looking at here?
Okay.
What have we got?
Thank you, Mayor. So there's criteria that are set out for this consideration tonight, and those criteria are found in Pocatello Municipal Code 17.02.180, Section E. I'm going to read those criteria to the council and to everybody here so they understand what's being considered, and then there'll be some other things that I will mention that can be considered tonight as well. And these criteria are also found in the staff report and part of the applicant's application. Number 1, how the requested zoning at the location in question would be in the community's best interest. 2, how the list of uses permitted by the zoning ordinance would blend with surrounding land uses. 3, if the subject site is physically suitable for the type and intensity of land uses permitted under the proposed zoning district. 4, if the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district would be adequately served by public facilities and services such as thoroughfares, police and fire protection, drainage, refuse disposal, water, sewer, and schools to ensure the public health, safety, and general welfare. 5, if the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district would be compatible in terms of their scale, mass coverage, density, and intensity with adjacent land uses. And 6, whether the proposed zoning designation is consistent with the comprehensive plan land use map designation. In addition, because this is a request for a rezone by contract, the council may consider the specific use for which the rezone is being requested as presented by the applicant. Furthermore, the Planning and Zoning Commission has added, as a condition of their recommendation for approval, 15 specific conditions. One of those conditions is that a resolute business plan be completed and provided by the applicant prior to the City Council public hearing, which is in your packets tonight, Council. These criteria, conditions, and the record before you, as well as the public testimony that you will hear tonight, should be considered as you make your decision on this matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anybody on the council that needs to recuse themselves?
Mr. Mayor, I have to recuse myself based on advice from our city attorney, based on some potential conflict of interest.
Okay. Anyone else on the council? And has there been any ex parte contact with any members of the council?
No, but I would like to mention that I have driven by and visited the site.
Okay.
I have also.
So I have also driven by the site.
All right.
I stopped, but there were really scary people there.
Little kindergartners?
Yeah, kindergarten.
Okay, all right, so Councilwoman Manon will be recusing yourself, and everybody else is driven, not Roger, is not driven by the site.
I'm pretty aware of it. I have grandkids that used to attend that.
Okay, so he's aware of it, but that's it. I'm the only one that hasn't driven by the site. All right, sounds good.
For the record, Mayor, Councilwoman Manon certainly has the right to stay on the dais. She can't participate in the deliberations or the decision, though.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, then I would ask who from the Grace Lutheran Church is here yet?
Do you need me to sign in?
Sure. Do we need him to sign in? Yes, please.
All right. Well, I'm Chuck Burstetta with Grace Lutheran, Director of Operations. And Jonathan Dinger was the applicant. December's kind of a busy season for church. And so he sends his regards. He'll be here later. That has a conflict. And really what Grace Lutheran is the property owners. We're the ones that have made the application. We'd just like to yield our time to representatives from Big Mama's house, since in the end that's the group that's looking at using the facility.
Okay. So a representative from Big Mama's house. Okay, and we do, for everybody's information, we do have a timer over here. We will keep track. At 7 minutes, we will turn on the 3-minute timer, and so when you start seeing that move, you've got 3 minutes left.
You assume I have good peripheral vision.
We'll tell you if you want.
Good evening. As you can tell from the slide package there that I gave you, there's an awful lot of information that I want to go through very rapidly.
Now, would you state your name?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I'm Ed Snell and president of Big Mama's.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, a lot of information. I'll be speaking quickly and try to get through this without stumbling over it too much. Want to go over tonight what we're trying to get accomplished. I want to go through what we are not, because there's been an awful lot of confusion in the public. Want to address home values, because that's an overriding fear among an awful lot of the people in the area there, and why we chose this particular spot, why it's so important to us, and why we believe it's very compatible. So I want to get into a couple of definitions here real quick. When you take a look, and first of all, I'm looking at HUD definitions, and I understand that's different than the city of Pocatello. But when you take a look at the homeless shelter, because that distinction needs to be made, a homeless shelter is an overnight sleeping accommodation, emergency type services. And what we're offering here is supportive housing. And the idea there is to help them transition from a state of homelessness to a state of owning a home. That's our scorecard, is actually getting them into a home at some point in the future. City of Pocatello definition that we're really concerned with tonight is, are they going to be there for more than 30 days? And yes, in order to get them equipped, job training, a degree maybe, all of that stuff, it's going to take more than 30 days, so they're going to be there for a while. So I wanted to show a couple of pictures to make a distinction. On the right-hand side there, you'll see a picture of Club Inc. in Ammon, Idaho. And I brought that up because it's very, very similar to what it is we're trying to do. Their objective is slightly different, but it's very, very similar, and it's in a residential neighborhood. They've had great luck there, and hopefully a representative from there is going to be here tonight. This is another view of the same property. Another view, this is the neighborhood, and you can see that it's a nice neighborhood, and they get along great. Not only do the neighbors get along with these guys, but these guys get along with the neighbors. This is our own Sika housing right here in Pocatello, and that's been a great success. I've talked with the men in here, and I have to tell you, it brings tears to your eyes when you talk to these guys, because they're saying we need more facilities like this. And these are veterans over here, and when I talked to them, it was really amazing because everything was yes sir, no sir. And so when I asked a couple of them if they'd mind coming and testifying as to what it means to them and what they hope it means to some of their homeless friends, every one of them said, no, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to do that. So that kind of gets to the crux of the matter there. Real estate values. I actually tried visiting and getting some definitive answers out of 3 different experts right here in Pocatello. I talked with a couple of realtors. First realtor said, because what my question was to them was, okay, if we do this project, what is going to be the impact on real estate values in that neighborhood? And first realtor I talked to, on our way over to the property, he says, Ed, I'm thinking it might have a negative impact. And as he drove through the neighborhood, he says, I don't think it will at all. Let me see if I can find some comps. I'll call you back tomorrow. He called me back the next morning and says, Ed, I can't find any comps. I can't help you. I could give you an idea, but he says, really, I don't have anything good to go by. So he recommended another realtor. I talked to that realtor, and he immediately said, hey, there's no comps, and there's nothing similar that we can really compare to in Pocatello, so I don't have an answer for you. I talked with an appraiser, and he was very gracious and said, bottom line is that realtors can offer an opinion. I have to deal in facts. There aren't any facts in Pocatello that's going to be good for this project to give you a good idea. So he suggested Idaho Falls. So I contacted a realtor in Idaho Falls named Kim Cyan, and here's what she said. I targeted the homes in and around the area where Love Inc. has properties. It appears these values have appreciated just like the rest of Idaho Falls. I collected data as far back as 2003 to show the value appreciation. She gave me 31 comps on that particular property. So I asked her about another one called Club Inc. and her conclusion there. This appears to be the same as the other near Love Inc. The market trend ascended just as its surrounding areas and comparable properties in Idaho Falls. While a transitional living area may be a factor in why or why not a buyer decides to purchase a home, it doesn't appear that the value is any less than than other competing homes in the market. Homes in this area have and still are selling within our market average and percent of list price. So I wanted to kind of give a real quick overview of the area from the air. Thank goodness for Google Maps. So we're taking a look here. You can see how this all fills in. This right here that I've got highlighted there on the left there, that's the rezone area that we're questioning, or asking about. And you can see that it sits right in the middle of a number of things that's going on. For example, to the west is a commercial area, And you can see that probation and parole is right across the street. There's a bus stop right across the street over on Yellowstone, which is very important for these people because many of them are going to be without transportation. We've got the townhouses that sit over here across the street. We've got a large daycare business there. And then over here on this side of the property, we've got a dental lab business and a rental home. This slide here shows us how the property will sit, where the two buildings will be, where they're proposed, and how the parking is. And that's all been drawn up by A&E Engineering. This slide I wanted to show you because it shows
We
that...
started your timer.
What's that?
Your timer has started.
Oh,
and so-
okay. Okay, so we've got 130 feet from the one side, 90 feet from the other, and 55 feet there. My point in bringing that up is that we're a long ways farther than what code requires of us. So if we take a look at ours to the townhouse project, we've got more green space than the townhouse does. The townhouse project there has 2 that are rental units. That's important as we talk about what's going on. The impact on the neighborhood, because of the designation that the federal government has, we can actually, as we're proceeding through this, we can ask for funding to help with other safety items in the neighborhood. For example, sidewalks or street lights or things like that that might be of help as well. So reasons for choosing this: we're near public transportation, we're near schools, churches, daycare, we're near entry-level jobs, grocery shopping, so on. Also, it's important for me to say that Grace Lutheran has been very generous in the way they're working with us, and it's part of their mission, if you will, to also do something good for the community, and that's why they're eager to work with us. So we're not a homeless shelter. These people are more than what's happened to them, and I'd like to think that we could treat them with dignity and put them in something that's in a neighborhood where they have a great advantage for success, as opposed to putting them out in the county or in a warehouse district. They deserve to be in the neighborhood, and at some point, we just have to take a look at where that works. So this parcel is located between a residential neighborhood and commercial property, making this request reasonable and compatible. Again, we've got a 94-unit apartment complex on this side, and on the other side, we've got the 12 townhouses, and it just seems to make sense. The formula seems to be in some areas that we go from commercial to high density to medium density, and this matches perfectly that formula. So in closing, I'd just like for you to consider these facts, and you know, it's one of those things where it's hard because everybody's fearful, everybody just is afraid of the unknown. But this is something that we do an awful lot. We do a great job of screening these people, and we just feel very safe that this is going to be a very safe project. Questions?
Thank you. Council, any questions for now? Councilwoman.
Sorry.
Larrick.
The 15, is it 15 conditions that the planning and zoning recommended, have you and are you prepared to meet all of those conditions?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, a question for Ed?
We had another one over here, Councilwoman Adamson, and then we'll jump to Jim.
Yeah, you just mentioned that you do a thorough screening.
Yes.
And I was just curious if you could speak a little bit more about that. I'm familiar with screening rental applicants, but I understand that, you know, requiring credit report, rental history, employment and income verification, you're probably going to have some residents of Big Mama's house that are going to be lacking in those areas.
That's right.
So do you still have plans to ask for that kind of information, or how will you determine the accuracy?
Yeah, the financial part of it is probably the least of our considerations because we're not worried about them paying. You know, that's
Right.
the whole idea. What we're really trying to zero in on is their background. So we do fingerprinting, we do urinalysis, we do those kind of things to make sure that they're not, what would I say, that they haven't been doing things like violent crimes, domestic violence, those types of things. So we're trying to screen those type of people and eliminate them from being able to move in. And that's not just for the neighborhood, that's also for the residents of this project.
Okay, so you just mentioned screening against domestic violence or crimes like that. As I read through the packet, I noticed that you said sex offenders and murderers would be disqualified, but I was going to ask, what about assault or burglary, which is
That's
one
right.
of the...
Yes, that's right. If they've been convicted of a violent crime, they are excluded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a time frame that you will, like if it's ever in their life, or if it's within a certain amount of
At
years?
this point, there is no time frame.
Okay, so ever in their life, if they have any kind of
Violent.
Violent.
That's right.
okay.
Thank you. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, Ed, sticking to the area that I know the least about, you did not mention that whether there was a difference in the length of time for marketing on the homes in Idaho Falls.
Actually, she did address that, and there is no difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Back to Heidi's point. What process is there for verification of the application information?
I'm sorry?
What process will you have for verification of the application information before admission?
We would do, like the fingerprints, we'd call down to the sheriff's office and get the information, give them the information to see if there's any outstanding warrants and those types of things. If there's a conviction, it would be the standard background.
Do you have an idea of the timetable that will take?
Actually, it kind of depends on where my understanding, I haven't done this process myself, my understanding is that that's a really quick turnaround to call down there and get that information back very quickly. I presume within 24 hours.
I have another question kind of related to Heidi's as well. So you talked about people who've ever been convicted of a violent crime, but one of the concerns we heard a lot about from people was drug use. So what if it is somebody who has a history of drug use, but not necessarily someone who's committed violent crimes?
Okay, if they're currently clean, then that's fine. For example, we see that our facility is going to work very, very nicely with what's going on in the community. So let's say that somebody goes into Aid for Friends, they need help with a drug addiction, they go to Hope and Recovery, they graduate from there, everything looks fine, so they get referred to us, and so on. When they come in and we do a urinalysis, though, we have every right in the world to turn them down, because the people that we have in there need to be protected. Does that answer?
Yeah, and when you said you have every right to, would that be the policy? I mean,
Yes,
would
that is
it
our
be-
policy.
Okay.
Yes, it's right in our manual, yes.
Okay. And what's and maybe you said this and I missed it, but what would be sort of the average length of stay for?
I don't know that we can say an average, because there's going to be so many different needs. We might be working with an individual, for example, that has good job training, and they just went through a medical bankruptcy maybe, so they may only need just a few months, 6 months, whatever. On the other hand, we may have somebody that is motivated, they want to get their GED, they want to go on and get their BS. We've actually got a family that has done that. The husband and wife both have gone through, and they're now living in Twin Falls. One of them's a social worker. So that
depends on the needs.
Yeah, it really depends on what the need is.
Any other questions, Councilman Bray?
One of the conditions was a resolute business plan, and first of all, I thought that was a kind of a weird adjective, but I would say that it's suggesting that you have a determined, a robust business plan. When I looked up, because I needed to make sure I wasn't in the dark, a business plan, I looked at several. I looked at a small business administration one, and I don't see any detail to financial, and I don't see any detail to expenses, who you're going to staff, those type of projections. The only financial thing I found in there was that in one of the give and takes you had was you're paying $425,000 for the land. That's the only thing I found. But I didn't find out what the cost of the structure would be. I found promises in here that there would always be 2 full-time staff around the clock. So where are you on that business plan? Because it says it would be provided to us by tonight.
Yeah. The business plan is in there. It may not be as robust as you're talking about because it isn't. And the reason for that is several fold. Number one, as far as the price of the building, we've been given some ballpark figures, but asking a contractor to spend a lot of time on something that we may get turned down on, I didn't feel comfortable asking them to do that. And then as far as the ongoing income, again, we're at that point where the grants, the people that offered the grants are telling us, okay, as soon as you get the property tied up, come back and talk to us. So we've got this, which one comes first, and we're kind of caught in between. So yes, we've got some general ideas, but we don't have any hard numbers like what you would like to see. And I agree, being, I've written business plans before.
Well, when you built your place, you probably had to, if you financed it, you probably had to put a business plan in place to get the financing and everything else. We're asking a community to step behind you with a real vague plan going on.
Yeah, let me add a couple of things. Number one, this is a contract rezone application, as you know. So if we don't get the financing in place to do this, then it reverts back to where it was. So we're going forward with the confidence that these people that have said, yes, it looks good, but you've got to get a place tied up, we're confident that they're going to come forward and say, hey, yeah, here's your grant money. But until we have the first phase done, we can't go to the second phase.
Well, I guess what would have been helpful to me would be to know how much money you've got going in. I mean, that's a starting point. Most people, when they fill out a loan application, have to say what they got savings and checking and investments. So that would be a place to start. I guess there has to be some assurance here that you can deliver what you're saying you're going to deliver to this neighborhood in terms of a security person, around the clock staff person, that you're going to be able to do the utilities and all that. And it goes both ways, because to have clients, you got to be able to provide that too. So right now you feel like you're just shooting in the dark on all this.
No, I don't feel that way at all. Our hands are tied, I guess is the best way to say it, Councilman Braze, because all of the people, the 2 grant writers that have been working with the various places to get the grants, they've all said the same thing. Get the property tied up so that we can start helping you. And once that's done, then of course we can build the budgets, and we can, because for example, if we get a yes here, then that would be way different from a yes where there's absolutely no income at all coming in. The size of the project is going to be a determining factor. And so our hands are tied just by going through all of these things right here. So until we know what we can do with the city, we just don't know.
We'll just have to take what you're saying at that point, because there's nothing more. Another question. What are the size of the apartments that you're going to be putting people in?
There'll be approximately 650 to 700 square feet.
Okay.
What the 1 bedrooms?
Okay, 1 bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
In your design or description, you said that you're going to have an intake for abused mothers or families, and that any children would have to sleep in the same room with the mother.
My understanding is that number one, yes, and number two, that the front room can also be used as double up as a bedroom,
Okay.
so that we can put 3 in there if we have to. And that's why we're looking at the second phase being able to do 2, maybe 3 bedroom units.
Will that limit the size of families?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is phase 1.
Yes.
And you're looking at single-bedroom apartments, and phase 2 would be
We're hoping to have-
larger apartments.
Yes, that's right.
Would that be on the same property?
Yes. Yeah, we've got 2 buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 buildings. Phase 1 would be 1 bedroom, phase 2 would be the larger.
And so that would allow you to segregate populations a little bit too.
If we
you
needed
get
to.
to phase 2.
If we needed to.
Okay.
Maybe make a follow-up comment to Councilmember Bray's budget question. I understand that it would be hard to determine all of your income because you don't know about the grants yet. But just a feedback for you, I was a little bit surprised to see that you didn't at least have proposed expenses, because those would be details that you probably would have access to, you know, how much you've got to spend for linens and utilities and those types of things.
Okay.
Whether or not the location is here or somewhere else, you would probably be able to get that. So I don't know, for what that's worth,
Yeah.
that would have been a nice thing to have on the business plan.
So,
as well.
Council, I'll remind you also, after we go through the process, we'll have Ed back up
Okay.
for a rebuttal period, and then also some more question and answering.
Well, I think
So,
it's good to get this
I
out
think it is
now.
too. That's why we did stop it, but I also know that people are wanting to, they're chopping at the bit to get up here and say something.
Okay.
So,
I do
then-
have some additional questions for him, but do you want me to wait till later?
Some questions could be answered too.
Go ahead.
Okay. A question I had for you was, I noticed that you had in our packet a lot of the kind of like intake paperwork and the application that they would fill out. Is there like a specific lease agreement that you have that is not included in this? And would it outline the provisions for entry and inspection from the supervisor that's on staff? Because, and I was wondering, like, are they going to be inspecting it daily or just periodically? I didn't see that information in the packet. Were you
Yeah.
maintaining the keys, or do they have their own private apartment and you don't, or how does that work?
Yeah, on the, let's see, on the intake process, all of the rules are outlined, and we've got a big binder of all of the information that you're asking that I think is in there. So your question again was on the, trying to play it back in my mind here.
Inspection.
If there's actually like a lease agreement that you're
Yes,
signing with
yes.
them?
And
Okay,
6
and was
months.
that not in our,
It is not in there.
Okay.
Yes.
But you
there is
do have-
There is one, and we have it, yes.
okay.
So,
Okay.
is there any plan to be partners with the people in there? In other words, some people may be homeless or in transition because of circumstances, but doesn't mean they're without income. They have a Social Security veterans bill, something like that. Is there a plan to have that as a source of partial revenue? I mean, somebody makes $400 a month, you charge $100.
And we're still working through that. The reason being is that some of the grants are going to be covering it all the way, and there won't be any need for that. And so it depends on how the grant money comes in, but we could and have looked at the way they're doing it over there at the VA Pasica House, and that's a very reasonable way to do that, yes. So we haven't shut the door on it's an either or. Right now, we're going to see how it plays out with the grants.
Have you looked at other facilities of this nature to see if they're real successful and the grants are out there
Yes.
and that they're funded totally by grants?
Yes. Yes, Idaho Falls is a great example. Club Inc. up there does a really good job working with the entire community. He tells us that a big part of their revenue comes from United Way. Another big chunk comes from INL. So they've got a lot of corporate sponsors up there as well.
So have you found any corporate sponsors or
No.
partnered with
No.
United Way in any way?
We've talked with a couple of people in United Way, but we haven't even asked for a commitment at this point. We're just saying, hey, if this comes through, can we talk? And obviously the answer's been yes.
Okay.
I had another one.
Why am I not surprised?
Okay, so in your packet of information that we read, I noticed that you had a lot of rules. For example, if people stay out overnight and they don't meet the curfew and stuff like that, then they lose their ability to stay there. I'm pretty familiar with laws for leasing and regaining possession of an apartment, but I'm curious if there are different rules that I'm not aware of for a situation where somebody's being provided that free of charge. Or, I mean, do you still have to go through the typical eviction process and give the 3-day notice and file the complaint for unlawful detainer and get the writ from the sheriff and wait that period of time if you do have a problem person?
Yeah, that's our understanding.
You still have to go, okay,
yeah.
so it's not like instantaneous
Yeah.
problem person is gone, you still
Yeah.
gotta wait.
One of the things that we've been told by especially the guys up in Idaho Falls is that once these people get into a good situation, they'll do everything they can to just march to every little rule and regulation that you have. They want to stay. And we figure with with all the services that we want to get done, that they're going to want to stay. They're going to want to follow the orders. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh. Like a ping pong ball back over here.
When you compared to the apartments on one side and the townhouses, do you know what size the apartments are, in that 94 unit? And do you know
They're
what's-
2-bedroom.
2 bedrooms?
Yeah,
so
that's all I know.
In the townhouses, do you have any idea of what square
I
feet?
don't, but there's a couple, well, there was a P&Z, a couple of people in that meeting that lived there, so there's people in here that know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, it's one thing to say they're there, but it's another thing when it comes to one of the issues is compatibility. And starting out with a very small one when maybe the other one is 12 or 1,800 square feet. The compatibility feature kind of leaves us out there in my mind, so it would be nice to know the sizes of those.
Yeah.
Can I answer that question for him? now?
Sure.
The Yellowstone townhomes that are the 94 units, those are townhome style. So you go in and you've got a main level with a living room, kitchen, and then upstairs you've got the 2 bedrooms and bathroom. So that's,
So 1,200,
no, they're not that large.
900.
8 to 900 feet. Probably 8 to 900 feet. That's what it sounds like.
Can I ask?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I lost control of this meeting when I started it, so.
One quick one on a different subject, but we did hear from a lot of people about concerns about lighting. And I was wondering if you could address that a little
Yes.
bit. What are you planning to have, and have you figured out ways that it can be
Yes.
not a problem for the neighbors? And
Yeah, the answer is yes. The specifics I don't know, except that A&E Engineering has worked with the city staff, planning and zoning staff, to know what that's going to require, and so yes, that's all been addressed. I don't know the specifics, but it has been.
In your application, there was conflicting information about your 501c3 status.
Yes. Great.
What is it?
Great question. When Big Mama's House first started, it was working under the Praise Temple of God 501c3. And we were advised to change that. So I think it was the first part of June, working with the local attorney, got that all started. They told us it would be 6 months. When we checked with them a couple of weeks ago, they said, give us till the middle of December. Well, now we're past the middle of December and still haven't heard back from them. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Whew. I know, man, and you'll be back up here too in a minute, I'm sure.
In a minute?
Well, not a minute. It'll be a minute. It'll be a while. Staff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Carl Anderson. I'm a senior planner here with the City of Pocatello. As noted in the agenda and detailed by the applicant, this application is to rezone by contract the property located in the 1200 block of Pershing Avenue, south of 1250 Pershing Avenue, from the existing residential medium-density single-family to residential high-density, to allow for 24 individual dwelling units to be operated as a group living supervised facility. This application was submitted by Grace Lutheran and the representative listed on the application was Jonathan Dinger. of Grace Lutheran Church. The request is specifically to allow multifamily development which is not permitted under the existing zoning district. It is important to note that the applicant must also obtain a conditional use permit for group living supervised, which is conditionally permitted in all residential and commercial zoning districts, which will be evaluated under a separate application and require a separate public hearing. The proposal does not fit perfectly within a use as currently defined by Pocatello Municipal Code. Based on the materials presented by the applicant and the proposed use is considered a multifamily housing development to be operated as a group living supervised facility, as defined by Pocatello Municipal Code. The proposal is not considered transitional housing as the length of stay is proposed to provide long-term housing at a minimum of 120 days. The site is physically suitable to support the type and intensity of land uses proposed and can be served by public facilities and services. The Public Works Department has reviewed the application and does not recommend a traffic impact study at this time. As proposed, all buildings will comply with the height and setback requirements of the current zoning, the residential medium density single-family zoning. Per staff's analysis of the criteria for review, staff concludes that the development is compatible in terms of scale, mass, coverage, and intensity with adjacent land uses. However, in regards to density, while the property abuts the commercial general zoning district to the west and the church to the south, there are no multifamily developments within a 300-foot radius of the property. While the applicant has reduced the number of units from the initial proposal, further reduction in the number of units would increase compatibility and reduce potential negative impact of a multifamily development on the adjacent land uses to the north and west. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on the subject application on November 14th, where the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-2 to recommend approval of the rezone by contract with conditions recommended by staff and an additional condition that a resolute business plan be complete and provided by the applicant to the City Council for the public hearing. The applicant has submitted a business plan which is included in the packet as attachment D. All notice and requirements for this application have been met. As of the publication of the agenda packet, 27 individuals have submitted written comment which are attached to the packet and multiple phone calls have been received. All additional public comments received after the date of the publication of the agenda have been collected and are before the council for review. Additionally, petitions against the application have been received and are attached to the agenda packet. The council may wish to adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation to approve with conditions or deny the rezone by contract of the 1.3 acres, more or less, of land located in the 1200 block of Persian Avenue from the existing residential medium density single family zoning district to residential high density to allow for multifamily development to be operated as a group living supervised facility. This concludes my presentation with one correction to condition number 10. It calls out the landscaping buffer requirement and states north and west. That should read north and east adjacent properties. With that, I'm happy to stand for any questions that the council may have.
I think I just have one question.
Sure.
Okay, I don't believe that, but okay.
If we were to approve this tonight, how long does the applicant have before they have to get the conditional use permit?
The applicant must receive approval of a conditional use permit within 1 calendar year from the date of the final approval of the contract rezone.
So theoretically, if we approve this tonight, they have a chance to get the plan together.
Within one calendar year, they would need approval of that CUP.
So we could do this again next Christmas. Any other questions?
I did, and I'm sorry, I probably should have given you a heads up that I had this question, but I didn't think about it until just now. But do you off the top of your head happen to know what zoning the Sika housing that they referenced is located in, or is there anybody that could look that up for
I
us
can
and
look
get
it
that
up
information?
and
Okay.
I can follow up with you.
Okay.
I do not know off the top of my head what that zoning is.
I kind of thought that was a little bit of an unfair question to spring on you, but
I did ask Melanie. It is
Okay.
located at Harrison and Sublet, or in that area whereabouts. And I can look at that zoning and follow up with you.
okay. And then just another clarification. So in RH zoning, transitional housing is not allowed, but group living supervised is allowed.
That is correct. Transitional housing is only permitted through the conditional use permit process in the commercial general and CC zoning districts. Group living supervised is conditionally permitted in all residential and commercial zoning districts.
Okay, so when I'm looking back at slide 4 that the applicant gave us with their PowerPoint here, they have the definitions of homeless shelter and supportive and transitional housing. So transitional housing is not allowed in RH, but group living is.
I do believe that the definitions that they're going off of when they talk about that, and I believe the applicant stated that in their presentation, that they are going from HUD's definition, acknowledging that the city code's definition do vary. They diverge from HUD's definition. City code identifies transitional housing as public or nonprofit living facilities with the same characteristics as group living supervised, but with tenancy generally less than 1 month. One example of a transitional housing development that we have within the city of Pocatello is the Aid for Friends location, 5th and I believe Carter, or near there. Yes.
Come on, Roger.
He has another burning question. He's going to wait on it.
I got one.
Okay.
I just went like, oh, I know what it was. I wanted to just be 100% clear. This application, if we approve it, and big if there, but if we approve it, this is specifically tied to this applicant and this project, and it's not like a permanent rezoning of that property. If for some reason this project does not get completed, then that reverts back. Is that correct?
So this application is a rezone by contract for this specific use, also with the conditions as recommended, where they would need their conditional use permit. City code under our contract rezone states that use as approved would run with the property. So it's not specific to the landowner unless that condition were added. That being said, it is subject to city code requirements under 1702-180 J9, consideration of termination of contract rezone agreement. Upon notification to the city council by the director of noncompliance of a contract zoning agreement, the council shall establish a date for a public hearing on said noncompliance. And to summarize, basically in the event the agreement is terminated, the city council shall adopt an ordinance reverting the subject property, real property, to its previous land use zoning district.
So it would go back to that ones.
If it falls within noncompliance.
If we, okay.
Okay.
I got one more.
Okay.
So how do you rezone an existing building that is higher density?
That
Do you
is,
have to tear it down?
that is a risk of the application, or any in that scenario.
So in this, assuming that the organization does not maintain itself, and and so they file a compliance, that means they probably don't have funds, so it probably fall on us to tear it down, wouldn't it?
So, form and content of the agreement outlines, it's same section of City Code, section J, number 5, A through G. There are items in there that the agreement would have to contain, and it may be a condition of the application that a surety be added to the application for in the event that that happens. Also, I should clarify that if, let's say, they were to transfer ownership, but it is the same use, that future owner would be subject to the same terms of the rezone by contract and the subsequent CUP. And try not to get too deep into the weeds on the what-if scenarios. You know, it's kind of drawing a blank, excuse me. But basically, that future owner would be subject to, excuse me, so if they were to amend, if they wanted to propose anything else that would modify the density, things like that, or the terms of their conditional use permit, that future owner would have to amend that CUP and rezone by contract.
So somebody could theoretically buy that or go through the process and then buy it or something like that.
Correct, and they would have to amend their approvals.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Before you leave, do we have any more written testimony after, 5 o'clock, I think, is when you're probably going to be that for us?
Not that I am aware of. I do not believe so.
Okay. In the clerk's office, have we?
No, that was all put together by the deputy clerk, and she has included everything in there as of 5 o'clock pretty much, wasn't it, Connie?
Okay.
Yes.
Super. Thank you. Just want to make sure we have everything there. Then we will move to testimony. Now we're going to do this a little bit different than we typically do. We've had the neighborhood request to have 3 representatives take 10 minutes.
Doesn't have to get anybody speaking.
If they were going to get a sign-up sheet of who they're representing, and so when we get to that part, and I'm assuming I'm going to assume that it's to the opposed part. When we get to the opposed part, if any of these 3 individuals are representing you, we'll have them speak. They'll have 10 minutes apiece. And then if there's any that is not on that list that would like to say something, we will have a total of 3 minutes per person. The clock will be set at 3 minutes, and so when that 3-minute time frame is up, we'll just ask you to thank you for being there and ask you to step aside. We will still need those people, the 3, to sign their name here, and anyone else that may want to speak to that as well. And so we'll go down to testimony. Any testimony asking for support of the application? Any testimony? Okay. So I'm a mover. I don't want to, we drug this out a minute ago, so we want to see you. So if you would put your name and then just hand it to the guy behind you, and then if you'll hand it to the guy behind you and just move up. That way we will speed the process a little bit.
State their name.
And then as a reminder, state your name, please, and then
Crystal Chanda, 845 West Center. I would like to ask permission to read something I typed up myself earlier.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes.
In 2001, I found myself a single mother of 2 toddlers with no safe place to live. There is one emergency shelter here in Pocatello, but it can only accommodate 10. The local Housing Alliance and Community Partnership provides financial housing assistance, but the waiting list can be up to 2 years long and not less than 6 months. These programs and the future Big Mama's House provide help to people who need assistance to get back on their feet and become self-supportive. We are not talking about bums, felons, drunks, or deadbeats. We are talking about people in our community that deserve a helping hand. Big Mama's House is not Big Mama's dream, as you will hear repeatedly tonight from those opposed. It is about many people's dreams. People who are humble enough to seek out assistance to put themselves on the path to become self-supportive and productive members of the community. The neighbors surrounding the future Big Mama's House are very fearful and don't know what to expect. There has been a lot of false and inaccurate information stated about Big Mama's House that would make me scared too. The neighbors need to know that Big Mama's House has bent over backwards to try to make their neighbors happy. They have paid additional design fees to relocate buildings for the neighbors' benefit. They have worked with the daycare to assure that they had what they needed to renew their recent daycare license. And I am sure they will continue to make any revisions reasonable to help the neighbors be comfortable. These revisions have been interpreted as lack of planning, and this is not the case. The community has shown a lot of emotion regarding the location of the supervised group living facility from the beginning. I think this emotion has blurred the lines between the rezone according to the city code and no rezone because nobody wants it in their backyard. In looking over the city's code criteria for review, there is no reason why this shouldn't be approved. I am confident that the council will not let the emotion in this room tonight cloud your judgment, and you will make your decisions solely based on the city code. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Robinson, pastor of Gate City Christian Church. I represent a group of 12 community pastors, and I want to yield my time to Mike Popovich, the pastor of First Baptist Church, to explain the reasons why we're in support of this particular project. That's okay.
Well, are we okay doing that where we've allowed it on the
I think if
On the
you
other
allow
side.
10 minutes for, I could have 12 guys come up, but I think one man would be sufficient.
We'll allow it. We'll yield your time to him.
All right, thank you.
We've made the exception, and so we'll add the 3 minutes. Well,
We'll start after this.
what are you asking for?
I need 5.5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, perfect. 5 minutes.
My name is Mike Popovich. I'm pastor of First Baptist Church, also a member of Valley Mission Board. It's a food pantry affiliate. We feed over 200 families a week. I'm also on the board of Family Services Alliance. That's domestic abuse prevention. First, I want to address why. At the last public hearing, a retired architect pointed out that Big Mama's House had not done their due diligence in establishing the need for a homeless shelter. While there was no formal study submitted, for those who deal with social needs in our society every day, the answer is obvious. We have a homeless problem. There were 3 people who spoke out in relationship to students of District 25. Last year, there were more than 270 students as homeless, as testified by myself, a member of District 25 whose responsibility is to deal with those students, and also one of the neighbors who said they were in between homes, and while they were not at risk, their student was considered home insecure, and I do believe that to be an exception, not the rule. When I came to town 8 years ago, I was quite surprised to see a town and a community of our size had no rescue mission. And by that I mean not just a homeless shelter, but a mission where not only is shelter provided, but programming and rehabilitation, and we have small programs, but nothing that I've seen in other cities that I've been a part of. We have Aid for Friends, which is a shelter, and yet there's no real programs, and it was already mentioned by staff, is a transitional facility. Some people wonder why we have a homeless problem with such low unemployment. Well, we realize that many people do not have the skills necessary to meet the jobs available. That has recently been identified, and job training has begun. You may have heard of the Crisis Center that's opening in 2019. That'll be a much-needed service in our community. Primarily, the work of the center will be to triage people and place them properly. They need places to properly place them. We have, again, some facilities and some beds and some programs, but we have a greater need than is provided. That would put the center in an odd place of having to place people and yet having no housing for them. We even have difficulty keeping mental health facilities, either public or private, here, and quite often have to transport to Idaho Falls or even Boise and other places. These are a few reasons why Big Mama's House and facility is needed in our community. Where, in dealing with this, is the second location for Big Mama's House is, as you know, has been this. This property was used as a church and now houses a daycare as part of the property. The property is too big for the daycare alone. Another church did rent for a while but could not keep up the payments. The requested land use is not out of character with the history or location of the property. That is why the planning passed the request on to City Council with requirements of a detailed business plan. The neighborhood sees itself as idyllic with single-family homes, medium-density condos. In all the descriptions, though, no one mentioned the western border and the commercial mall, professional businesses, and curiously for me, no mention of the Federal Probation Office as being an issue or a problem or a concern for the neighborhood. People often get used to what's around them and are sometimes concerned about what is new or different. It's been said by the residents and the editors of the Journal that the mission should locate to a commercial district. There would be no problem there at all. Interestingly enough, as you know, this week in the newspaper, Aid for Friends was reported have done just that to, and even the CDBG grant allowing them architectural fees and replanning to take the old city hall and turn that into a facility. But the locals, business owners, have all complained and have put that now into review. So the real point for me just to share with this is you're going to find resistance no matter the location. There is not a zoning in town that allows this without a conditional use permit. So as city government and the city parents, so to speak, you have a review of any kind of shelter facility. As an example, back in the mid-90s, Road to Recovery, which is a sober living facility, requested a conditional use permit on between 2nd and 3rd on, forgot the street.
just a couple over from the old City Hall. And they had a signed petition there by homeowners and business owners, because it's a mixed-use area, and every single one was against it. There was kind of a local hero in the rehab in those days who got up and spoke. The City Council granted a conditional use permit. It's still in force today. And asking many places as I could, from that day forward, there have been 0 issues, 0 complaints, 0 visits by the police department.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and council members. This is the first time I have ever done this in my entire life.
Could you state your name for us?
Oh, I'm sorry, Janine Joy. J-O-I. I kind of feel like I'm superfluous, that everyone has already said everything I was going to say. But I think that from what I have read in the paper, and thank you to whoever is reporting this, because they're unbiased and they're doing it straight across the board, it's not a shelter. It's a home, where people can stay. I think people have the word shelter in their mind. There's a stench, there's trash, there's yucky, and but it's not. It's a place where people can live. Also, the lives from what I saw on here, it's not really around any other houses. But even if it were, it would enrich the lives of the people in the neighborhood. People enrich other people's lives. Iron sharpens iron. Everything works for a reason. And we are. I don't understand why people would think that helping others is not a good idea. That I'm new to Pocatello. I came here from Phoenix 3 months ago, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of helping people in this town, and I don't understand why people think that it's not a good idea. And we are supposed to help those that have less than, clothe the people and feed them if they need it. And this is also to help others who have already started the process of helping themselves. This isn't just vagrants. They've already started the process. They're clean from alcohol and drugs, and what's not to like. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Heather Wood, and I brought a little note here. Hopefully I can speak clearly for you. I come before you guys today not only as a woman, but as a woman of God. I myself have been homeless 3 times in the last 2 years, not by any fault of anyone, but my own, okay? My family and I have brought in people of our own community who have needed that help up to get out of a bad situation, an abusive situation. We don't have much to give, but we gave because that's what we felt was right. And this is what Big Mama's House is wanting to do. They are wanting to give that hand up to those people who are ready and willing to make a difference in their lives, to stand up and say, enough is enough. I am done being homeless. I am done having other people support me. I want to do this on my own. I want to be independent for my family and for myself. So I talk for Big Mama's House, and it needs to be approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, good evening. My name is Dina Bowden. I have a letter here that was emailed to the president of our board last night by Mackenzie Howell, and she evidently has emailed this letter to each of you. Have all of you already received that and had an opportunity to review it?
We've got so many.
We've got a lot.
Would you like me to read the letter, or do you want to review that later?
You can go ahead and read it, yes.
Okay. To whom it may concern, I'm writing today in support of Big Mama's House and its proposed construction of a supportive housing facility on Pershing. I have lived on the 1400 block of Pershing for 16 years and have run an in-home daycare at my residence for 6 years. This is a really wonderful neighborhood and it has been very good to me and my family, in addition to being a really great location for my business. I have been lucky to have the best of both worlds, and I believe that it is why this location is so appealing for Big Mama's House as well. A centrally located, friendly neighborhood that is in close proximity to a myriad of city services and businesses essential to a person who is working to get back on their feet. Entry-level jobs, public transportation, grocery stores, churches, banks, and social services. When I first learned of Big Mama's House and this situation, I heard some pretty terrible things. A few were valid concerns, but after looking into it, I realized that most of it was coming from fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of something that is hard for most of us to understand. But many of the concerns being highlighted are things that have already been happening in our neighborhood. High-density housing / zoning. We already have some high-density housing within blocks of our homes. Crime / safety. A homeless person isn't more or less likely to be a criminal than the person moving in next door. In fact, a resident of BMH will have stricter expectations than anyone moving into one of the rentals we have in the area. Traffic, vehicles. Most of us live within a few blocks of the busiest streets in Pocatello. To say that traffic will become an issue is moot. An increase in the number of cars? Well, let's just say I can point out several cars on my block alone that haven't been driven in years and are parked 3 houses down from the housing they belong to. Homelessness is an issue across the country, and the solutions are not easy. I in no way want to dismiss the concerns of my neighbors, but I do feel that the main concerns, safety, traffic, and zoning, have been considered and addressed adequately. The bottom line is this: we have homeless people in this community, and without the type of help that BMH is offering, they will likely remain homeless. At least with BMH, they have a fighting chance. Doesn't it make sense to help them rather than ignore it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Herring. I've been homeless for the last 12 months. I recently just came home back to Idaho. Since returning home, I have worked 200 hours at Basic American Foods, and I am just about to get on full-time in about another month or so. What I've seen with Big Mama's House is that they're offering low-income housing that helps address a problem in our community that happens to not be highly addressed here. They're offering low-income housing, they're screening heavily, and that's helping address the concerns of their neighbors. And I've seen that given the opportunity to be able to help turn around the lives of those who have gotten themselves into situations, generally they will help out the community once they have progressed in life. It helps a lot, and having a safe place to live at night gives them the opportunity to not have their things stolen on the daily. It gives them the opportunity to be able to turn around their lives. They're positioning Big Mama's House in a place where they have access to the rest of the city via public transportation, which also helps out with getting to your job, legal services, and mental health, which are all issues that aren't typically thought of when you're homeless and starting to progress further into your life again. And that's some of the issues that Big Mama's House is addressing. Now, their screening process is reasonable. It helps with keeping people who have committed crimes that are not acceptable for the area and the places in the community around there, like the daycare. You don't want a sexual offender near a daycare. Their screening process is going to prevent that. It helps out a lot. Also, something to take a look into is Colorado Springs Rescue Mission for future ideas on what could be done in the city. I think Big Mama's house is going to be a good place to help turn people's lives around. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Taz Bright. I'll be direct but hopefully loving. I've been told tact is not my thing, but I'm from St. Croix, born in the Caribbean, raised in Houston. Used to be a bodyguard, correctional officer, martial artist, that kind of thing. That's my world, right? I've seen people in really poor situations. I've seen people in really rich situations, and I've noticed the amount of money you make does not determine if you're a criminal or not. I know really rich criminals, and I know poor people who would never even think about it, right? So the idea of saying that this can't happen because of the income of the people that would be living at Big Mama's house, to me is just ignorant. And I don't say that to be rude. Again, I'm saying it just to be straight up and honest, right? We cannot make a decision based on ignorance. We can't make a decision based on false information, all right? The world is filled with a whole lot of people who have a choice. Every single person in this room has a choice. I can walk out this room and choose to be a criminal. It's not going to be because of my income. It's going to be because of what's in my heart and what's in my mind. Honestly, I know more poor people who will pull over, help you change your tire in the middle of the snow, than I know rich people that will do the same thing, right? So I'd say put aside the ignorance and the false information, support Big Mama's house and get it done because people need help. Last time I checked, people are more important than property values and other people's fears. So for me, just put the ignorance aside and get it done.
Thank you. Are there any others in support of the application? Okay, are there any uncommitted to the application? Okay, then we will go to any opposed to the application. Now we have 3 people that have been asked to represent a number of people. Where are you 3? 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So why don't you 3 start, and then if somebody is not being represented or is not represented, I wanted you to make sure that you have the opportunity to speak as well.
Remember to sign in too.
And yes, and if you'll sign in and then hand it back to and so what we're going to do is give you 10 minutes, and so that will start at the end of 7 minutes. Do you have a list of people that you're representing, or?
I do on my phone, but I turned it off so it didn't ring. So
probably smart.
For somebody else.
So who in here is she representing? Is people, okay, raise your hand. Yeah, that's a good idea. She's representing your guys.
I got an hour. I doubt I will take 3
10 minutes, but we're in good shape. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
My name is Shelley Nugent, and I live at 1091 Cherry Lane. And I wanted to thank the mayor and the council for being here tonight and hearing these important issues for our neighborhood. I'm going to be reading my own words, but I do tend to get a little nervous, so I will try and make this happen. So we are a well-established 60-plus-year-old neighborhood. We all bought our homes with the zoning in place. It would not matter if anyone came in here to build an apartment complex. Our neighborhood was not designed for high-density living. I kind of appreciate that this slide has been left up here because it's been brought up with the Yellowstone townhomes. There is no access to our neighborhood from the Yellowstone townhomes. The only access that they have is in and out of Yellowstone. They can't even get to Winco directly without going on to Yellowstone. I don't consider that is near us, but it is not part of our neighborhood because you can't drive there from our neighborhood without going. I do feel that commercial part is a nice buffer zone for our neighborhood, that we don't have the traffic and noise of the traffic, that the commercial part kind of bounces back so we don't hear that noise. Our neighborhood is, I do feel it's small, even though it's conveniently located. That's part of the reason why I bought my home where I bought it, is that I'm convenient to everything, but it is still small, and I know my neighbors and they know me, and we do neighborhood activities. We bought our homes because of the way that it's zoned. And per the city code, I'm just kind of going to read it here. A residential zoning district were established to promote the orderly development and maintenance of livable, peaceful, and attractive neighborhoods where residents could live their home lives with a minimum of disturbances and disruptions. Only such uses that would not interfere unreasonably with the enjoyment of normal home activities. This project will change the integrity of our neighborhood. Residential medium-density single-family zoning was designed to accommodate single-family dwellings and a mix of other home types such as townhomes, which we have the McCormick townhomes there, which are single-family owner-occupied homes, and up to 2-unit dwellings. Sorry, I was making some corrections as people were speaking, so I'm trying to make sure I get this all in here. Per Realtor.com, which I know those of you, it's not always our favorite source. Per Realtor.com, high renter concentration will bring down property values 13.8%. And a homeless shelter will add another 12.7, so that's a total of 26.5. It was brought up today that it was hard to find these comparables, and Jim Johnston brought up that the time frame that homes can take can change that a little bit. I know you just asked the question, you didn't state it, but that is something to take into consideration. When you bought your homes, you looked what was amenities and things that were in the neighborhood. Those are the things that homeowners look at when they go to buy. When people retire, they want to stay here, but eventually they might want to get a condo and be in something smaller. They need to be able to have the income from their home and not have that negative impact on their property values. The main distinction for this property not being considered transitional housing and being considered supervised group living is the length of stay for the residents. As we know, a lease agreement is between a renter and a landlord, and it protects both parties. The owner can't raise your rent, and you in turn promise to stay there for a certain length of time. If you move out early, you still have to pay the rent for the term of that lease, and you forfeit your deposit. With this application, there is nothing that is going to prevent someone from staying a day or 2 days. They could stay there a year, but there's no obligation. There is a lease, but what's contractually holding them to the lease? There is no negative impact for that lease. If anyone breaks the rules and they're kicked out, that also may be an immediate thing. There's no way that we can say how that people are going to be over the 30 days, which is the distinction between making this a transitional housing and group supervised living. And I don't think that there's any way that we can say for certain that that is going to be that. And that will greatly more impact our neighborhood in the other sense, because transitional housing isn't allowed in any residential zone properties. This is why this project belongs in a property that's already zoned appropriately. Please do not change our zoning. Again, our zoning has been in place for 60 years, and we as homeowners and voters hope that it will stay for another 60. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want my Realtor.com? I only have one.
Okay. Is this in the packet, the Realtor.com thing? Okay. Okay.
She doesn't use all her time.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Kelly Hopwood,
and I live at 1210 Willard Avenue. I want to let you know how much.
Kelly, before you, do you have a list of will you stop her time?
I do not, sorry. I misunderstood that request.
Okay. Anybody in here that she's representing? Okay.
Is that enough?
About the same people, okay.
I will get you the exact names, just give me
That's okay. I just want to make sure that we've got it, and that'll give you time to take a breath in. Okay.
I know.
You're ready.
Breathe.
And Kelly, I won't start your timer until 7 minutes have passed, and then you'll see the three start to go down, okay?
Perfect. So, thank you, and we will get you that list. We have it. I wanted to let you know how much I appreciate you taking the time to hear both sides of this and to listen to us. I have a handout that goes along with my speech that I would like to hand out to you if that is all right.
Would you like to hand it out after the speech or during?
I would like to hand it out right now.
Okay. And I'll hand it across to everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm a teacher, and so I think that it rubs off on my speaking a little bit. I didn't pre-take your notes, but I did just give you a couple of things.
Do you teach third graders or?
You know, actually, most of my experience is teaching adults, so it works. I also wanted to point out that on the first page, I have this same map, and I'm very proud of it because I was able to use the city's GIS website. Carl taught me how. And the blue boxes represent neighbors that we have committed to our cause, committed to not wanting this rezoned. And the red is the property, so you have to turn it to, okay. Please vote to preserve our neighborhood. This project is not ready for production and does not belong in a residential area. I've taken a considerable amount of time since this project was originally proposed in our area to look over the plan of Big Mama's House, including the operations manual and the new business plan. I've also dedicated time to talking with Big Mama's House and their representative, Ed Snell. I'm very disappointed with their overall plan. I feel like there are several problems that you need to be made aware of. We have not received consistent information. It's tough to know if we should go with the most recent statement for the project or what is in the application that's presented in front of you. We do not even know where they stand on many issues because it's been said differently so many times. Some main confusing points for us. For applicants to the program, there is no mention of drug testing after the initial intake. Also concerning, even though they will search belongings and people at intake, there is no procedure for searching upon return to the facility. What plans are in place to ensure long-term compliance? They have been cited as speaking of several differing plans for the existing building, keeping the daycare there, having counseling services, and having their own daycare. These inconsistencies make their plan and the future of the Growing Place daycare uncertain. The project has referred to themselves as long-term. Like Shelley talked about, it's not a guarantee. And this in and out of residents will cause it to function as a homeless shelter. The project has not been transparent, despite multiple requests, about who will qualify for this housing and who will be turned away. They insist that they will exclude registered sex offenders, but the application form in the zoning proposal suggests there could be exceptions. They either don't know themselves who will qualify for this project, or they know that their application process will be minimal, and either way is not a good answer. Security guards. It was stated from the project that there would be security guards on site 24/7. In their house manual, it states that they will have 2 security positions, which is significantly less than 24/7 guards. They then posted on Facebook on October 29th that they have chosen not to have security guards at all. What matters most about the security guards and all of the issues I've presented is that the project submitted a plan to you to rezone. Well, to you and planning and zoning, and have already told us and you that they will not be following what is submitted. This is unacceptable. They are essentially showing us that they will not follow their own plan, the one they are asking you to approve this evening. The Planning and Zoning Committee barely let this move forward with the condition that they clarify inconsistencies and submit a resolute business plan. Their proposal is still full of contradictions and unspecific operating information, muddled even more by their new business plan submitted just 1 week ago. The project has tried to convince me to support this location and their proposal and has not been able to. They have been unwilling to answer my questions and contradicted their own manual several times. I cannot support this project or this terrible choice of location. I feel very strongly that this operation is not ready for production. These issues need to be given the proper attention before they buy, build, and open in an appropriately zoned area. I feel very lucky to have ended up in this neighborhood. I have great neighbors. They're over here. One of them regularly clears my sidewalk and drive of snow. The other one comes over and helps my husband and my father fix our vehicles. It has been wonderful knowing who's around me and my family. I have recently got to know more of my neighbors, and I really appreciate all of them. I know that if this area is rezoned, the uniqueness of our neighborhood will change. It will no longer be a quiet, safe street. I know it will deter good home buyers, and some of my current amazing neighbors will leave. Last time this came before City Council, the Bonneville neighborhood was filing an appeal against the conditional use permit for the Big Mama's House project. Excellent video, by the way. John Leith, who was representing the project, talked extensively about how they were meeting in committees and constructing a plan to smooth out confusion, to be prepared for setting up this center. I do not believe they have done so. They slapped together a business plan, which does not even have a proposed budget, as you've already mentioned. They have not disclosed the specifics of where the money will come from, and we have not seen any estimated budget. Is their plan sustainable long term? My neighbors and I are very concerned about what would happen if they run out or mismanage their funding for their project. To leave a neighborhood, our neighborhood, with an apartment building in a zone that could not be utilized would be a terrible misapplication. If you guys will turn in the handout to the pie chart, that's what I'm going to talk about next. The signatures are on the following pages, not the actual signatures. Yes, just the names and addresses of the signatures. The actual signatures are in your packet. As a neighborhood, we are learning how to organize and unite, so our petition had repeat signatures. I needed to know some numbers, so I made a document where each name and address was listed alphabetically. I deleted any repeats of names, and I sorted the residents into 3 sections. 1 being residents who live in our neighborhood, that's N. 2 is residents who are connected to the daycare and do not live in our neighborhood, meaning their children spend a significant amount of time at the Growing Place daycare at 1250 Pershing Avenue. 3 was all other residents, family members who visit our neighborhood often, people who work in the area, and also a section of signers who realize that this is a city issue, not a neighborhood issue. We have 359 signatures on our petition that do not repeat. These are residents of Pocatello, taxpayers, and voters. Of the 359, we have 210 from the neighborhood, which is 59%. We have 48 people connected to the daycare who are not in our neighborhood, that's 13%, and 101 from other neighborhoods in Pocatello. These other petition supporters know that if this homeless shelter is approved here, it will make it more feasible to approve one in their residential neighborhoods. My good friend and neighbor who couldn't be here tonight also attached some heat maps, which I had never seen before. I wanted to explain them to you really quick. They're the last 2 pages. The second to the last page is all of our signatures. The red or hot is when the signatures were close together. And then the blue cold would be further apart. And as you can see, they go right down the center of Pocatello. and also they center right around the property. The second heat map shows the families that use the daycare at this current facility at 1250 Pershing Avenue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oh, Kelly, you knew exactly what to do at the time, didn't you?
You timed that just right.
You did.
If you'd taken those petitions a little slower, she would have used it to the minute.
That's right.
My name is Norman Reese. I live at 231 Myrtle Street. I'm speaking in behalf of myself, my wife Mona, Dallin and Chantel Nunn, Annette and Harold Hargraves, and Kaylin and Terry Burton. Do you need any more?
As long as you've got them down, that'll be good.
All right. Now, I appreciate you being here, and I know I've got a little time. I also know, too, that I've been taught very early in my youth that a long spoke made a big tire. So I'll try to expedite this as much as I can. All right. The huge architectural and operational procedures submitted, which looks more like it could be measured in pounds instead of pages, reminds me of an adage used when I used to work for nearly 40 years out at the site. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, then baffle them with baloney. And this falls into that category. This rezoning request to cram large buildings with very questionable spaces for parkings right up to the backyards of the homes on McCormick and Willard Streets will destroy any backyard privacy the homeowners have. Now this flies right into the face of the very purpose of zoning practices. We built and bought homes in this area that was appropriately zoned as a residential area to ensure peace and tranquility for the largest and probably lasting and most important investment that we will ever make as homeowners. It's been unclear during the previous months just what Big Mama's house wanted to do and what it would be classified as. It's kind of been a moving target, and it's hard for us to really get a handle on. And some people said it's going to be a home for ex-convicts too. So nobody would be discriminated against. We have to visit the reincarceration rate of ex-cons, and it's written at 35%, both locally and nationally. In the Big Mama application to the Planning and Zoning Commission on page 3, it says, in both Salt Lake City and California, we have witnessed other examples of this type of program to provide solutions for homelessness with long-term programming and housing. And we are modeling our own efforts after their successful programs. Suffice it to say that our desires match their own program goals, from the appearance of the housing to the vetting of applications to the educational support needed for their long-term success. Now, contrary to attempts to show how other areas have accepted and embraced these proposed facilities, we find their operation, after which Big Mama's house is going to model their own efforts, to be very rampant with serious problems. There are three facilities in Salt Lake City under the umbrella of the road home. As they are closest in proximity to Pocatello, we will focus on them. There's a Utah legislation audit report that outlines the issues with Palmer Court, as well as the two other facilities in that road home. And we're going to pass you out a little handout. Thank you. And we'll focus on just that first page for a minute. We've got an executive summary for you. And I'm not going to go through a lot of that, but just on that executive summary, page 9, drug paraphernalia can easily be found at Palmer Court. Page 12, health inspectors found numerous health and safety violations at Palmer Court. Page 18, Palmer Court staff only enforce their policies as a last resort. In summary, the road home has taken an official position against drug use in its facilities. However, the actual practice appears to be one of tolerance towards drug use. And so that's what we find in that audit report from Utah on those facilities. So we hope, we trust that we don't have anything like this here in Pocatello. This report is shocking. It clearly shows that this operation is anything but successful. As a matter of fact, the road home is having to remove families from one of these facilities and house them in hotels at $100 a night for their safety. So this whole business really results in a dismal failure. We don't want the same thing to be modeled here in Pocatello. The area in this rezoning request is surrounded by single-family units and townhouses, as has been mentioned. They're not HUD homes, with most being in the $150,000 to $250,000 range. The surrounding area has restrictive covenants prohibiting high-density units. This requested project will go right up to the homes on Willard and McCormick, destroying any privacy that they have. Now here's the issue I really want to focus on. About 300 yards away is a large elementary school, Syringa, with 450 students. There's also a bus stop for middle and high school students on Willard Street near Chapel Street. Hundreds and hundreds of kids, preschool through 5th grade, 5 to 12 years old, walk these streets daily when school is in session. And in case of fire drills or emergency evacuations, they walk down Willard Street to the staging area of the church on Chapel Street. And these are our most vulnerable citizens. Now, we in the neighborhood, we're not uncaring and we're not unchristlike. We're compassionate, we give generously to those in need, even though some who write in the Idaho State Journal, and again we found one this morning, seem to feel we're uncaring and hard-hearted. We too are people of faith, and we rejoice now as we celebrate the birth of our Savior. We also read and study the Scriptures. We wonder as well how long it has been since those who criticize our stand have read the words of the Savior in Matthew, wherein he says, "Whosoever shall offend one of these little ones, it would be better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea." These are the people that we're really concerned about. Our neighborhood is crawling with little kids, and we do not want this area to be rezoned and have this facility in this type of neighborhood. You know, I'm just an old, dumb, retired nuclear physicist, and I have a hard time, understanding things. The one thing I do understand is that of increased risk. And the fact that security guards have been proposed, and that residents will not initially have jobs, waiting around with nothing to do, and the probability of weapons, knives, guns, drugs, and drug paraphernalia, and the fact that this will serve as a magnet, a drawing card to bring additional people here from areas all around this facility, resulting in more problems to city personnel, police and emergency personnel, as well as our neighborhood residents. This all points to increased risk to our young children, a risk that we're not willing to accept. One incident would be one too many. Now, since most of you are parents or grandparents, we're certain you can relate to our anxiety for the safety of our children. We cannot deliberately allow for this consequence to be made plausible. Their dreams should not be allowed to trump our dream and shatter the dreams of hundreds and hundreds of homeowners who have chosen to live here in their nice, quiet residential neighborhood, where their children can run and play outside, walk to school or church with little anxiety for their safety. Many of us are veterans too, and we've served our country in times of war as well as peace. We, along with our neighbors, are honest, law-abiding, tax-paying, voting citizens. We have chosen to live and stay here, build and beautify our homes and yards, and enjoy the dream of a happy family and friends. And we have done this in an area properly zoned to achieve our dream and our future. Now, concerning the previous appeal that appeared before you a year and a half ago with the Bonneville neighborhood, as quoted in the Idaho State Journal, quote, "To me, it strictly comes down to a zoning issue, and I want to make sure that I treat every neighborhood the same, whether it's my neighborhood, the Bonneville neighborhood, or the Satterfield neighborhood," said Councilman Gary Moore, who initiated the motion to rescind the conditional use permit. Quote, "Based on my interpretation of the codes and the ordinances, I feel that this isn't permitted in the residential neighborhood." The appeal to rescind the conditional use permit was approved 4-0. And we ask that you have the same consideration for our family and our neighborhood. And in the strongest terms possible, we ask that you respect the zoning that protects our neighborhood and deny this zoning request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. He nailed it right down to the second. He must be a nuclear physicist.
It takes practice.
Okay, that's right. Okay, what we're going to do, we are a couple hours in. I know there may be a few of you or some others that might would like to be heard and take a few minutes here. If one of these three has not represented you, if you would please, what happened to my sign-up sheet? He's right there. If you would kind of gather your thoughts, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene this with any testimonies that you may have that have not been represented. Cub Scouts always ring it, but I don't ever get to do it in a meeting, so.
Okay, so we're still on the phone.
Okay, thank you very much for staying with us and for allowing us a break. It was much needed, and there was a small tragedy back there where we got it covered before we came back in, so we're in good shape. We are still on testimony of those opposed to the application. And so, looks like Mitch, you're here. If you have not been represented and you would like to speak, please come and get in line here. If you get here, we'll get you the board.
Just come right here.
So, okay, we'll go ahead and start the meeting over again, and we'll turn the time over to you.
David Pearson, 1344 Willard Avenue. I'm a building contractor in the city of Pocatello for numerous years. I can't even remember how many years now. I've worked for a building developer contractor here in town that I've sit in front of, proposed these kind of changes, zoning changes, conditional use changes in front of many of you on the other side, for the project, not against some. I used to work for the 7th largest assisted contractor builder in the United States, and so I've got a little bit of an idea of this high density contracts and everything else and how they actually approach it. And they would look at, I want to bring my expertise into this thing is because we're talking about precedent. We're talking about precedent here of what we're going to do on rezoning these properties and this property, and what's going to happen in the future and what happens now to this property. The property right now is, we're talking about this company coming in. I think Roger's brought up a good point, and that is what happens if they fold up and this does not happen. Somebody else is going to gobble this up. I can tell you for a fact that I worked on several of them as the developer in this, that did these things on, several projects, that they actually look at projects and they see, and their eyes and ears are probably laying on this project here on snagging this up, because they look at these things. They look at the area and they go, oh, here's one that already going to be set precedent that is going to be residential high density. And they'll come in and they'll say, okay, it's residential high density, and they're going to say, we want to take the roof off these buildings, and we're going to make it 35 feet, and we want the building that's next to it to be there, or by the church down below it. I mean, I don't know, but it sets precedent. It's like what they've done here. He talked about these other businesses that's actually come in here. And they had to come in here and actually ask for a conditional use permit to get their business to go into that area. And it's time to say, no, enough of these people are changing.
Thank you very much. I wasn't watching the clock. Okay. You got a few extra seconds there.
Am I next? My name is Tony Kavanaugh. I live at 375 McCormick. I felt that I should talk because my house, when you look at Willard and you go from the white roof to the brownish roof and there's a gray roof, that would be me. I purchased my house in April of 1978. It's remained pretty much the same all these years. And had there been a facility there, I probably wouldn't have purchased that house. I have questions about things that were brought up today. They say it's a good blend. Yeah, that would be my daughter. I think when you're talking blend, it's like high density, a low density, and then there's medium in between, not single family, let's add however many units. That's not a blend to me. The townhouses across the street from me, I would consider a blend. This was left on my door recently and I understand Big Mamas. I understand needs. I understand all people aren't bad. All rich people aren't bad. There's good and bad in every community. But the last line here says, these people that should be loved and engaged, not feared. But then you go up here and they have mental health counseling, domestic violence counseling, anger management counseling. That makes me go, okay, why do you have this counseling, for these people that I don't have to fear? I mean, I have a lot of other questions, but I'm not really good at speaking or putting and I did write a letter. I don't know, you probably saw it. 65 years old, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Can I read from my
Please.
Yes. Okay. Let me just.
If you would state your name for us.
Right. Okay. I'll read that. My name is Payson Fugit, and address is 1434 Spalding Lane. That's about 4 blocks from the subject property. I oppose the rezone. Why are we here? That's a question I'm asking myself. It's because 4 board members ignored or considered non-relevant the Big Mama okay, but not in this location testimony of 22 people who testified at the hearing, as well as 4 to 5 safety concerns. I agree that the location is excellent with regard to access to the city infrastructure. Also, I commend the applicant's willingness to make the parcel available for Big Mama's use. I see Big Mama's business plan as a work in progress and an experiment in homeless rehabilitation. There's no performance projections or milestones are listed. No projections or goals for percentage of clients rehabilitated. I understand your legal definition of the business, but based on attachment E, the handbook,
I see it with a little more negativity, as a supervised commune. I thought one of the purposes of the zoning ordinance was to protect the property owner from his neighbors. Shouldn't the reason for Big Mama's house be stated clearly and quantitatively so that the property rights taken from the community property owners can be compared to the benefits of having Big Mama's house at this location? Why doesn't Big Mama's house belong at this location? Because it's a business. Because the buildings and parking lot proposed are not compatible with the existing community. Look at the architectural drawings in attachment B. There are no comparable structures of that size in that community. Note that the parking lot to the church is empty most of the time. Because with an estimated clientele, this is my estimate, of 35 people plus 5 employees, it's really high density in comparison to the community. Because there is no thought being given to being a good neighbor. If Big Mama's house is to be successful, I believe there needs to be community buy-in and partnership. There should be no need for a 4-foot fence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Kirk Fry. I live 1216 Willard. I've been on a planning and zoning in other states, and I am thoroughly disgusted with your representatives because I witnessed what they called their checking out the neighborhood. They walked down the block and they showed up at the meeting and stuck us in a closet. I am very, very concerned about this kind of delegation of power. It's wrong. I just moved into this neighborhood 2 years ago. I've lost 2 homes, and I picked my own ass up off the ground, and I got me another home. I have stepchildren that need these low-income jobs. They don't need to compete with them. There's a lot of children around there that's what they got to do. A lot of them don't know how. My neighbors can attest anytime they need help or I see them doing something and struggling, I offer help. I'm a disabled man, but I sure as hell push farther. And I believe that there's a need for Big Mama's dream or progress, whatever you want to call it. But our location is not the best in the world. I mean, yeah, he talks about probation being right there across the street. Well, 2 years ago when that picture was taken, they were on that corner up there. I mean, why do we have to say that having probation there is a plus? That means the kind of people that are coming into our neighborhood are of question. They have no monetary investment. I know they need help. I've been there. Didn't necessarily get it, but I got it on my own. I know it's hard and difficult for those people, but you also got to remember, all these neighbors of mine have been Old Town residents, and this is what they've lived in, and this is what they bought, this is what their dream was. And when I looked at that house and I looked at that neighborhood, I wanted it, so I got it. The children, I'm out there most afternoons when they're walking and stuff, keeping an eye out. You know, it's just little things. But as a community, the way we are, we're pretty damn good. This will throw a monkey wrench into our way of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Council, my name's David Herder. I live at 1112 Meadowbrook. One of the things I want to talk about tonight As you can see on their map at their building site, right next to that is a daycare, and that daycare was mentioned a few times. I just want you guys to think about this. That daycare started 28 years ago in their home, where they watched kids that lived in that neighborhood. And that neighborhood and the kids have grown, and the demand for a bigger facility has come, and that's why they're in this new facility. That facility has 12 full-time employees. It has 70 kids on the registers. Most of the time, 50 to 60 come every day. If this house is proposed and allowed to go in, talking to a lot of the people that take their children there, they won't take their children in there anymore because of safety. They don't know the people that are going to be in there. Big Mama can't even tell us what's going to be in there. They can't even give you a business plan. 3 years and they cannot come up with a true business plan. And they still want to put this here and put a facility with 6 people that are full-time employees that live in our neighborhood and 6 more that don't, put them out of business. I don't think that's very smart business to allow in our community, is to shut a thriving business down for something that we can't even give you a game plan of what it's going to be. 3 years you guys have asked for a business plan from Big Mama's house, and they haven't given you anything except crap. There is no financials, no future where that's going to go. And then they talk about this is just part A. Well, what's part B and C and D? They haven't addressed any of it. They haven't addressed to you what it's going to cost to build that facility. They should have that to give to you and to us. They should be able to tell us what that facility is actually going to do, but they don't. They just fill us with all this garbage. And I personally am raising a grandchild who will be going to Syringa, and I can't have her walk by that because I don't feel it's safe. I've raised 4 kids there, 1 still at home. My oldest child, or my youngest child right now, gets at the bus at the LDS church. I can't allow her to do that if this is put in, because in their plan they talk about, well, everyone's either going to be mentally unstable or whatever, but they address that we're going to have all this counseling for them, but we're supposed to love them, but they won't tell us what we're actually supposed to love, what we're supposed to accept. That's where our children grow, and that is the people I feel we need to protect first and foremost before we worry about what Big Mama wants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. Mitch Fisher. I live at 383 McCormick, adjacent right to the property there. Just kind of going to summarize what everybody's saying. You've heard a lot of heartfelt testimony from these people that live in these neighborhoods because we really care about this neighborhood. It's not a HUD neighborhood, as she states. It's far from that. We put tons of money into our homes, and we hope to get it back eventually. This coming into a property like this and push down on us without a need that we don't want this. And if we want to make a contribution to a charity, we will pick our own instead of having it taken out of our long-term investment that we've made. There's a lot of concerns that haven't been addressed. He states that there's going to be background checks, but she knows too that you can only do a background check so far without being legal. It's not like you're going to go down to the Pocatello Police Department and just have them line up with 150 people that you're going to rent to and say, do a background check for me. They won't do that. I hear the Sheriff Department does for a fee. That's just not a thing we're willing to have in our neighborhood. It's a haphazard plan. It's not put together well. It's just not going to work for us. You've heard this testimony. We care about our neighborhood, and we don't want this here. And as taxpayers, and you guys are elected officials, and I'm going to say it because everybody else won't, but this is an election year. So come on, guys. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Did he represent everybody out here? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
My name is Joan Collette, and I live at 1224 Pershing. I'm in the house next to what he called the dental building and the rental, and I live there. What I'm speaking to is I'm concerned about a 2-story apartment building being built right there to block my view. Number one, my property value, because it's right next to me, and also the disturbance in the neighborhood. The dental office applied for conditional use. I thought, well, I won't fight it. It was right next door to me. And I thought, well, they're only there during the day. They won't be there at night, so it won't bother me at night, things like that. But it's not true. All little things affect a neighborhood. And that dental lab, which is now closed because he is ill and he sold it and it's empty now, affected my lifestyle because my bedroom faces the ball field, and at night they would clean and the vacuum would come on, and I could hear it in my bedroom at night. So I'm concerned with what's the lighting going to be, because it has to be greater lighting because it's an apartment complex. At night, shining in my room, my bedroom, there's other neighbors right around it that have probably the same concerns. Yeah, and I talked to a realtor that said, well, there's nothing really that we can do except it might raise the land value to rezone, but your house value could go down. The other thing is, I have a friend that lived up on Iris, and they built apartments, buildings up on Syringa, I think that is where it is. And she said, we've had nothing but problems. Nothing but problems. So our concern, or my concern, is apartment buildings being built in our neighborhood that has no apartment buildings. It isn't conducive to the neighborhood. It doesn't add to our neighborhood, and that's part of the city code of rezoning. It's supposed to improve your neighborhood. When Office Max came in, when the building that has Probation Pro came in, it helped our neighborhood. It blocked this noise from Yellowstone. It got rid of an old...
Oh, I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Trailer court.
She was trying to sneak by there. She saw that. Is there any others that are opposed to the application? You don't want to speak? Any others opposed to the application that want to speak? Yeah. Make sure you sign up. Somebody left their tablet up here, it looks like.
That might be the journal.
Oh, that's yours?
Oh.
I just want to make sure you don't walk away without it.
I am Amanda Romero, and I actually live on McCormick, actually across the street from Mitch and Tony, where their houses are the ones that are going to be impacted the most. Recently, we got the Ring, the doorbell that has the camera, and we just purchased our home in May. We went from a very high density location on Pine Street, which is very busy. We moved off of that location because my kids can't play in the front yard. That we are constantly watching because of the concern of cars zooming back and forth and all the people around. When we bought this house, that was our top priority, was will our kids be able to go and play and not have to worry about, are they gonna get hit by a car, or are there gonna be people walking down the street that we don't really know, and are they gonna be safe? Are our kids gonna be safe? So going back to the Ring, recently I was watching, just because you get an alert every time a car goes by. With the daycare, in the mornings, we get probably about 10 extra cars, and in the afternoon when they're getting picked up, there's about 10 extra cars. truly there's probably maybe 12 cars at the most that come back and forth that I don't recognize besides the neighbor. I like that because that means my kids can go play and there's not a worry that you're going to have 40 cars zooming in and out, or you're going to have people walking up and down the street. The only people that really walk up and down our street right now are our neighbors. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention because as a homeowner, I moved from a high density to a low density so that I can have the protection and my kids can feel safe, and I like the traffic flow. It's nice and quiet. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any others opposed to the application that would like to speak? Okay, then we will give the applicant an opportunity for a rebuttal.
Any questions?
And questions.
From the council.
From the council. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Questions from the council.
I'm back again.
Yes, you are.
All right. I got so many notes here, I hardly know where to begin. One of the things that I want to point out right off, though, is that somebody mentioned the items on there that was concerning that we're going to be offering, like counseling, anger management. It's not just for people that have those problems or that are doing those, it's for the victims. The victims need counseling. They need to know how to get over those crises. So it's not like we're bringing bringing the guy in that did the assault or anger management. It's also the people that need to be counseled through that. Let's see. Got that. The idea of inspections has come up. The way we're going to be doing that is that they're random. That's what we say in there. They want to know how often that is. It's random. It also has to be in conjunction with the rules for HUD and all. I mean, there's legal things that we have to do in addition to that, but they're just random. The daycare, there's been a ton mentioned there, and this is the way it's been presented to the neighbors, to the daycare owners. When we first went to them, we wanted to use part of that building as part of the offices. The owners informed us that that wasn't real practical because we'd have to go through a whole bunch of information or go through a whole bunch of qualifications just like they did, register with the state and so on. And so it's like, well, that isn't going to work. So we went clear away from that. And then as far as them remaining there, we've always told her that we want her to remain there. And in fact, if she doesn't, then we'd be forced to open up our own daycare because these people that we're trying to get employed and moving on to another home, they're going to most likely need daycare. So we want a daycare. We want a daycare there. Want to point out too that the setbacks that we're talking about on this property are far greater than what is required. 10 feet is what's required. We've got at least 20 feet, in most places 30, and in some places the setback is like 90 feet. So we've exceeded that, the expectations or the rules there. Been brought up about the lights and the landscaping, and all I can tell you is that the planning and zoning staff have been working with A&E Engineering to address all of that stuff. And as I said, that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know the particulars. I just know that they're working that out. Let's see, it was brought up that 94 units shouldn't be considered in this conversation, and yet their map shows that the people there backed up against that are also people that have signed the petition. So they've, I guess, self-admitted that is part of the neighborhood. Even though you're not driving through it, it still has that same impact that you're talking about. And basically, too, the petitions that they have, the signatures on the petitions are basically showing that nowhere in Pocatello is this facility going to be welcome. It's going to be a fight no matter where we go. And that's sad, and hate to see that. You know, we heard a whole bunch about the fear of this and that and the other. All of that is worst case scenario. But we have to keep in mind these things are going on in every neighborhood in town already. There is the meth lab just a block over from this that the police had to go out to. And as been pointed out, the probation and parole. None of these places around us have the screening processes in place that we do. So it really comes down to, are they good people or not? And we're doing the best we can, as anybody can, better than you guys can in selecting your neighbors. And along that same line too is, if we were actually trying to maximize the density, we could actually build more apartments. So we've compromised on how much impact we've got on there. If we went with both buildings as one bedroom, which we don't see that as what's going to be happening, but if we did that, that would be 24 units. If we do the 2 bedrooms on the second phase, which is what we anticipate the need is going to be, then that gets us to a maximum of 18. Far, far less than the amount that would be allowed under the strict definitions. And I think, you guys would know better than I, but I think the conditional use permit or the way you guys approve this is going to limit that anyway. So it's not like we can go clear over the top. I'd remind everybody that homeless does not mean criminal. We've heard that. You know, just because you're homeless doesn't mean that you're a sex offender or rapist or drug addict. We've seen examples of that tonight of people that have been homeless. We've heard testimonies that, you know, they're not bad guys. We also know from research that these facilities have the greatest success in getting people transitioned into home ownership when they're part of a neighborhood. And that only makes sense. If you think about it, when I was growing up, when you guys were growing up, you had best friends that were right there in the neighborhood that you could visit. If we take these families and put them out south of town or in a warehouse district or a commercial area, who's they going to visit? We've got to look out for these homeless kids as well. They're part of it. Okay, I was hoping that the gentleman from Club Inc. would be here tonight because he's had a lot of experience in dealing with the neighborhood, and it's not been an issue, and I was really hoping he could address that and didn't get to. Property values, as I talked about, the research up there around those, which are similar to what we are trying to propose. It's not a homeless shelter, flop house, any of that thing. You heard from a resident, Mackenzie, that Dina read the letter from, how she's in favor of it. The city's comprehensive plan update, chapter 12, addressing housing, says the mission statement is to encourage an adequate supply and variety of safe, affordable dwelling units located in neighborhoods throughout the community. Not warehouses or commercial zones, as has been so often suggested. They deserve, these kids, these families need and deserve a place in a neighborhood. This project helps fulfill that mission statement. So there's 3 basic facts that I see this boiling down to. First of all is the land in question. Why we believe it should be rezoned to high density is actually looking at the city's own precedents. I did an inquiry through the city records, and by the way, those ladies are awesome. You hired good, whoever did that. Anyway, I asked the question, in the last 5 years, how many requests have there been to go from medium density to high density, and where were they? And what was the result? And the result was that there's been 2 requests in the last 5 years, both of them granted. Neither of those that were approved bordered commercial zoning. Neither had a large daycare business next to it. Neither had high density on 2 sides of it. In fact, the Yellowstone townhouse apartments, the 94-unit complex, the townhouses, 2 of those are rentals. They're not owner-occupied. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's rentals going on already in this neighborhood. So then we get to the physical location of the buildings, where we place those. And that was actually at the suggestion of one of the landowners, property owners in this neighborhood. So we're trying to listen and accommodate as best we can. The buildings are, as I said, set back farther than the city requires us to. 95 feet to one way, 50 some another way, 30 another. I mean, so we're not even coming close to the 10 feet that this general definition would say that we could do. So then if we take a look at that and we say, okay, the land meets precedent, we take a look at where these properties, these two buildings are going to be located, and the fact that they're not huge, dense projects, then that gets down to the people. And we continually hear those people. And there's so much fear surrounding those people that it's just become sad, I guess would be the best way to put it. Huffington Post just put out an article just recently, and it said it was titled "The 5 Myths of Homelessness." And I should have brought a copy of that for everybody. But it goes through all of the things that they've talked about in terms of property values and fear of drug addicts and all that stuff. And it just doesn't play out. That just isn't who's generally homeless. And certainly it isn't who we are going to be ending up with after we go through the screening process. So I guess if I was going to summarize it, I'd put it this way. If you believe that we are representing what we're doing fairly and honestly to you, and if you believe that the city, the conditional use permit can be enforced, then it just seems to me like it's something that needs to be done. And if we can't do it here, heaven forbid, I don't know where it could ever be done in town, because it's that formula going from commercial to high density to medium density, which we see in other places in town. Questions?
The facilities that we heard about in Salt Lake City, the road homes, Palmer Court.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are those homeless shelters, or are those supported?
No, actually, those are supportive housing. They've done it differently down there. They're looking at people that traditionally they're chronically homeless. In other words, they probably can't be taught the skills that they need to go on to have a job. Most of them fall into that category. The beautiful thing about Palmer Court is the way they're organized in terms of the way they raise money, those type of things. It's really, they've done a good job with that. Yes, they've done some things that they admit, that they say, hey, yeah, we've fallen down on. Obviously, we're not going to model the things that they've done poorly. We're looking at the things that they've done well, and that's what we want to model. Frankly, the best example that I can give you of what we are going to look like are the facilities in Idaho Falls. They've done a good job in their selection process. They have offered tons and tons of help. I have no doubt that, if you had a question that I couldn't answer, I can call him up and he'd give us an answer that quick. He's a great resource, had a great heart. He wants to help.
How many units was that? Did you tell us that already?
No, on his, he's on the cul-de-sac there, and I'm trying to remember. Do you guys remember, was it 8 in each one of those?
8.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. Theirs is set up different. Theirs is more of a chronic facility as well. So when you walk into it, one of their facilities, so I'm sorry, I didn't exactly answer your question. It's 8 in each one, and there's 3 of them on the cul-de-sac. So there's 24 units.
24.
Okay. And so when you walk in the front door, it's a big, like, living room type area with a TV and a couple of sofas. And then you have a hallway going down to the left and right, and there's 4 bedrooms on each side. They don't have a kitchen in there. It's just a bedroom and a bathroom. That's all it is. And so when I asked Blair, I said, okay, so is this a better model, or is an apartment a better model? And he didn't even hesitate. By all means, build apartments. It just is more conducive for privacy. You can teach better skills like cooking, for example. that type of thing. So he didn't even blink. He just said apartments is the best way to go. But the general sense is the same.
I was just wondering how comparable the Salt Lake City facilities are. Obviously, they have a lot more units. But Salt Lake City is also a lot bigger than Pocatello. But I just don't know some of the problems that were pointed out that they have experienced. Do you feel that the size and what the difference in approach addresses those problems and makes them not?
Exactly, yeah. Palmer Court itself has a couple hundred units. It's huge. So that would be hard to manage. We're starting out small. We're growing as we need to. We feel confident, obviously, that we can manage those as they come along. And it's so important. I don't think I can overstate this. The problem is so big in our community, and it's only going to get worse as real estate values go up. Our problem is so big that this isn't going to be big enough to take care of all of the needs in Pocatello. We're going to be under a microscope. We want this thing to run so perfect that, frankly, the next time, 5 years from now, or whenever we come before you for another attempt at something like this, we actually want these neighbors to come in and say, it hasn't been a problem, and we would encourage you to do that. That happened of all places in the Bronx. Believe it or not, in the Bronx. They were proposing a shelter, not what we're talking about, but a shelter. And the homeowners, the residents, the neighborhood got together, marched on City Hall, did all that stuff. The city went ahead and granted it, approved it. So the lady that led the march against all of that, she hired an attorney. She fought it, she lost. 5 years after that, they did a report. A guy that wanted to do some research on it came back, quizzed her, and she says, no, there hasn't been a problem. I was over-exaggerating because of her fear. Because of her fear.
Can I piggyback off of your question about the, what is it, Club Inc.? Do you or does anyone here know what zoning that is located in? Is it in residential zoning?
It's residential. On one side of the street, there's a bunch of duplexes. On the other side, it's single family. And then behind the duplexes, it's single family there as well.
So they do qualify for group living, and it is in residential?
Yes.
Do we know what density of residential?
Yeah, I don't know.
Other questions?
One of the things that, reading through this, and I've gone through it a couple of times, what are the indicators for you suggesting there be the presence of security guards?
Oh, the security guard has been a crazy one. When the security guards first came up, I personally was opposed to it, but was told that that's what the neighborhood is going to want. And so Big Mama and their experience from the previous attempt, they said we need to have security guards. Well, the very first person I talked to said, well, if it needs security guards, I don't want it in my neighborhood. And then it just kept on going. Everybody kept telling me the same thing. And so I said, okay, if it bothers you, we'll take it out. So that's the story on the security guards.
So it was a reaction to a perception that you had?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're not presently planning for any security guards?
We don't feel like we need them for us, but we just thought it would be one of those things that would help the neighbors feel better about the project. And then we found out that was the wrong message. It sent just the opposite message. It sent the message that they should be fearful. And so it's like, okay, well, we don't have to. So, and by the way, the facilities up in Idaho Falls, they don't have a security guard.
Another question. I haven't heard tonight any statistics in terms of the ability for this to be successful in people's lives. I know it's not 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 10%. Can you give me a number?
I can't.
Okay, so you...
I don't.
Have no idea.
And it's going to be our number, if you will, that we're working with is so small. I don't know. Well, best answer, I don't know.
Well, my point is, if you're modeling after all these places and you're trying to find best practices, it looks like you would be modeling after a place that was very successful and they had numbers for you, because most of these places can't get grants unless they have measurable statistics and analysis.
Yeah. I don't have an answer for you. It's a reasonable question. I haven't thought to ask it.
Okay, and then a lot's been made about the screening process. The screening process can be really simple. Get on the internet and see if they pop up. Or it can be, and oftentimes that's just the state they're in at that time. Are you doing any consideration to a regional or a national screening test for these?
That hasn't been the discussion. No reason why it couldn't be part of our intake process. Part of where we're coming from is based on the experience that Big Mom has had, we figured that a large percentage of our referrals are actually going to be coming from pastors and bishops and stake presidents and people like yourself that have already vetted them, or they've already gone through Hope and Recovery. And so there's likely somebody that's already touched them that can say, hey, yeah, these guys, they lost their house because of medical bills or whatever. So we anticipate that a lot of these people are going to be already vetted.
Well, but I also know the other side, that there's people I have a lot of hope and confidence in that I've been disappointed in.
Sure.
So maybe they've returned the feeling towards me too. What is the length of stay in supportive housing? Do you have a model? Your model is 4 months roughly?
Yeah, 4 to 6 months. And then beyond that, it's going to depend on where they are. HUD, who's going to be a big determiner on what it is we do, because their guidelines basically tell us what kind of grants we're going to be getting. Basically, they're saying for the grants we're applying for that it will be 2 years. At the end of 2 years, if that person is making progress or getting their degree or whatever it is that we're shooting for, that can be extended.
Okay.
So they can go on to whatever's necessary.
Another question that I haven't seen mentioned or addressed tonight, will there be an extended outreach beyond just the residents? In other words, will you have group gatherings where there are more people come in at a certain time than just at your facility?
We haven't put that on any of our plans, so we have to say no at this point. The size of the facility, the rooms that we're going to be working with, we wouldn't be able to do it on site. I mean, if we were going to do some sort of a gathering to teach them how to cook something and we wanted to invite the public, we wouldn't be able to do it there.
Okay. That's all my questions.
I have a few more.
Okay, Linda?
Related to one of the things Roger asked, there was in someone's testimony, I can't remember who said it, but they also brought up background checks. I think it was you. And how do you plan to pay for those? That those are not free, and if you have a lot of them to do, and based on Roger's question, you know, how in depth you're going to go, how would those be paid for?
Yeah, no, that'll be part of our expenses. And it's just something that we'll have to incur, much like the urinalysis kits. We'll have to incur those expenses.
So that'll be built into the budget?
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Okay. Another question is about the issue somebody else brought up, Shelley Nugent brought up about leases. That even though you will have leases, there's nothing that keeps people there. You know, and the one thing that distinguishes this facility from a homeless facility is the length of stay. And so if they leave after a day, then it basically turns it into a homeless facility. So what is your answer to that issue?
Yeah, a couple of them. Number one, if you've been living out on the street, you're not going to come in for a day and leave. I mean, that's just not what it's going to be about. Number two, our intake process it's going to take at least an hour for a person to go through all of the questions. And by using, assuming we get the intake person that we're hoping for in terms of coming from ISU, they'll use some emotional intelligence interviewing to try to help get this identified. Is this person really ready to make the steps necessary to move on up the road, if you will, to get out of that predicament and into their own home? Does that answer your question?
Yes, kind of.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that number one, when people have a free house and they haven't, and they don't have any place to live, there's a lot of motivation to stay there. Number two, the process that we interview is going to help identify those people that are really sincere about moving forward. Are we going to be tricked? I have no doubt. Everybody gets tricked. There's lots of con people out there, if you will, that are going to do what they can, say what they can. It happens in every walk of life. We're just going to do the best that's possible.
And then one other question was about traffic, and I don't know if this is really a question for Ed or for staff, but people have brought up traffic concerns, and I think our staff said that there was not an immediate study planned. I can't remember exactly, but I was wondering if we could hear a little bit more about that, but would that come
Well, we can call him. If Ed can answer that question, that'd be great. We can grab him in a minute. I have a question for Ed over here.
I can say that on part of the report that I read coming from the staff, it said that they saw no need, that it didn't require a traffic study. But he's here, he can answer better than I can.
But your feeling is that traffic should not be substantially changed?
Right, and the reason I can say that is these people are poor in assets. They don't have two cars. They're lucky to have one in many cases. If you go over there and take a look at Sika Manor, you'll see that there's only just a couple of vehicles in there. That's where they start. We want to move them up, of course, but we don't see traffic as being a big thing. And I just thought of something else too that I need to share real quick. When I came on board, when I was asked to help out, I interviewed, for the lack of a better word, Big Mama to find out what her real goal and intentions were. And as I saw it all coming together, I, of course, came on board to help her out. And I can tell you, sure as I'm standing here, that if I thought that we were going to be bringing dangerous people into this neighborhood, I wouldn't be a part of it. I don't think Big Mama would be either. I have friends that live, many friends that live in this neighborhood. I have friends that have kids and grandkids that live in this neighborhood. I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize them. I have a great niece and a great nephew that go to the daycare. So I wouldn't put them in jeopardy.
Okay, Roger.
One thing, how do you come up with the conclusion that people who are living on the street aren't going to leave in a short order?
That they're not going to leave?
Yes.
Well, we can't absolutely guarantee.
Well, but I mean, you made it as a kind of statement of fact that people who are on the street will probably not leave after a day.
And I believe that. By the time we put them through that interview process, it's going to take us an hour. We have page after page. We should be able to learn. The social workers that are coming out of ISU are being taught emotional intelligence interviewing. That's what Blair uses up there at Club Inc. And he says, when you go through that process, he says it works. So that's the best answer, and that's why I'm so sure.
Okay, because when we did the other iteration of this, a lot of my research showed that most of the people who are homeless don't stick around for a month.
Well,
I mean, even and this was just across the board. So I'd like to know the data point or what you got going there. Intuition tells you that, but I'll give you a little side. I was in a courtroom one time where a woman had a no contact order, and she was violated it because she wrote her boyfriend who was in the jail. Now, understand that. Who's going to look at the mail? She wrote her boyfriend. She was so compulsively hooked to him that she couldn't manage her own life, even though that put her in violation of the no-contact order, and the judge put her in jail then.
Yeah.
So,
Well, again, I'll just go back and tell you that they're doing it successfully, very successfully in Idaho Falls. They're willing to help us out any way, shape, or form, and he swears by that intake and interview process.
okay, so can you know, it's too late to know that. Do you know their rate of success or
I didn't
failure?
ask him, quite honestly. I didn't ask him.
Okay.
Any other questions, council?
Oh, wait, I can kind of answer that. One of the guys I talked to in the one unit actually moved up there from Pocatello 5 years ago because he couldn't find any help here, and he landed in Club Inc. up there. He's still there. He's got a job now. The way they do theirs is they pay rent based on their income. He's paying rent. So that kind of answers your question.
Well, that's one person, but you know,
exactly.
18 or 24 units doesn't tell me how many others might have moved through.
Yes, I agree.
So, you know,
What is the average length of stay at Club Inc.?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember if he even told me.
5 years or more.
5 years for one, for sure. I don't know, but it's got to be pretty decent because they don't have a waiting line or anything like that. They don't have people standing there waiting for the next one to open. They've got a waiting line in terms of a waiting list.
They don't have,
They don't have people standing out on the street wanting the next one, the next vacancy. In other words, there's not enough turnover that it makes sense to have somebody standing out on the street waiting for a vacancy. The club has a list of people that want to get in.
okay.
Okay. All right. I have a few questions myself. You may have answered the drug testing. There was a question, I just wrote down a list of questions that people asked. The drug testing, when you bring them in, you're going to test them, and then you're going to randomly test them throughout the month or however long they're there.
Right.
Okay. The concern of privacy for people's backyards came up, and as I look at where they are, there could be some issues on the one house. It looks like maybe a couple houses, but it's a little ways away. Is there any way to address that?
Okay, so I'll look at it from the same direction you are. Okay, when you're coming into the property, okay, number one, it's 150 feet back that way.
Okay, I understand that.
Okay, and so the buildings themselves are going to be set back, that first one will be set back 30, is it 30?
Right there, having that. All the setbacks are on there.
I believe it's 30 feet on that backside there where those two homes are. It's 50-some feet from the second phase building, 55 I think it is, from that line down to the next property line. So we're quite a ways away.
Are you building any kind of a deck, if you will, out the top layer there?
It's not on the design. Not on the design.
So the back of I'm assuming now the back of the building is just basically your wall, and you've got windows, and that's it.
That's right.
Entrance and everything is out the front.
That's right.
Okay. There was a. Let's see. I had a question as I went through this thing here. What do you do in regards to any weapons that you may see you're bound or what?
No, yeah, they're confiscated. If they show up with a weapon, it's confiscated. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not allowed.
Do you turn on entry or
is it,
all the time?
Do you have?
If they bring in a sack of groceries, the live-in manager has the right, maybe even the obligation, if you will, to look in there, make sure there's no booze, no drugs, and no guns.
Okay. Some of these people you said would have children, probably have children they could have, I guess.
Could have.
We don't.
Yeah.
And then another one was, we answered the background checks. Counseling, the lighting.
Yes.
The lighting in a neighborhood like that, to me, it seems like if we have a lot of lighting, you want a lot of lighting, but you don't want too much because it could infringe on the neighbors there. How much lighting do we have? You may have answered this.
Yeah, to be according to code, the best example I can give is my pharmacy, because on the backside of my pharmacy is residential, and so we have low-level lighting. It's only about that high, and that's what the city had us do back there. The engineer and maybe the staff could tell you exactly what we have to build to, but whatever it is, that's what we'll do.
All right. I think that you've answered about all the questions I remember everybody asking that I at least wrote down. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, in regards to the budget, I know that seems to be a stickler for some people, and I guess I've got to say that when I talked with the planning and zoning lady that had suggested that that's what she wanted, I asked her specifically what she was looking for. And she said she just wanted an outline that could be looked at real quickly. She didn't want a ton of details, number one. Number two, when we start talking about budget, it never occurred to me in my wildest dreams that that would be part of the consideration on the zoning. It just didn't. I don't know that that's standard. If it is, I missed that.
Okay. Any other questions, Council?
But it was a condition that was stated very clearly.
Yes, but she also qualified that afterwards when I asked her. She wanted something that she could look at real quick and not be bogged down with details. That's what she said. In fact, I wish I could remember exact words because it was two ends of the spectrum at the same time. I've forgotten it now, but when I walked away, my thought was, okay, a lot of years ago I saw a book, one-page business plan, and I thought, well, that's what she's asking for, but there's no way to do that with this kind of a facility. So,
well, I looked, because that really struck me, the word resolute business plan, because it's got a strange adjective there. And so when I did my searches, small business administration and other places, I found that a business plan is usually 20 to 50 pages long.
Right.
And it contains several things. And even if you're doing a synopsis, it should have several factors. Or, you know, I mean, that was an easy find on the internet to find all those factors.
Just trying to match up with what she said she wanted.
Okay. Other questions, Council?
Can you direct us to where is the quick synopsis business plan in the information that you gave? Because there was a lot in there. Was there one specific page that was very large?
Yes, this is.
The business plan is pretty short. Yeah, it's pretty much 2 pages is the plan, and then there's the other stuff that's substantiates it.
Where is that?
Attachment D. Is that a fair synopsis?
I think so.
Okay, I had another kind of question. So when Ms. Hopwood was up and brought up some of her concerns, drug testing after the initial intake, you said that will be done at random. Procedure for searching upon return to the facility, you've said that the on-site manager would be doing that. Some of the other things that have been cited as potential inconsistencies about not accepting people with violent criminal history, but then possible suggestion that there could be exceptions in some of the paperwork in here was a point that was brought up. Would you be able or willing to clarify some of those concerns in writing? I mean,
Absolutely.
so that these people would feel more comfortable with it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions, council? I think we have a question for Carl. Then. Good evening, Carl. So I thought, traffic was one of the questions, the traffic study. What?
Okay, so traffic is addressed in two places from the staff report. The first section, the Public Works Department has reviewed this application. And also they did a site visit, I believe, with our representative for our streets department, and they determined that a traffic impact study was not required at this time. Additionally, page 8 of 9 of the staff report, so not the findings of our staff report, based on the 7th edition of the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, the average vehicle trips per dwelling unit in an apartment building, multifamily, for PM peak hour traffic is 0.67 vehicle trips. So assuming the proposed 24 residential units, the potential maximum trips generated weekly or on a PM peak hour is 16.08 vehicle trips PM peak hour traffic. And again, I consulted with the Public Works Department and our staff, and traffic impact study is not required at this time. For kind of comparison, if we had a subdivision application, the typical trigger for a traffic impact study would be 100 PM peak hour trips. And just to add on to that, if the council did recommend approval, a traffic impact study could be added as a condition. Don't know, I try to cover everything.
Okay. Then I had a question on lighting. What does...
So city code addresses lighting in residential neighborhoods and commercial zones. So 1705420 standards for lighting. All lights shall be shielded in a way as to direct all lights towards the earth's surface and away from reflective surfaces. All lights shall be shielded in such a way as to direct light away from all adjacent properties, especially those developed with residential uses. Any canopy structures used at a business location shall have recessed lighting with diffusers that do not extend. And it goes on, but to summarize, additionally, light poles would be capped at 15 feet. I believe it's addressed also as a condition that all lighting shall be compliant with this section of City Code, condition number 6.
Okay. Any other questions, council?
The council did inquire earlier as to the other Sika housing location. The zoning on that property appears to be residential, or excuse me, RCP. So that is our mixed-use zone. As far as how that was permitted, I'm not sure, and nor do I know how that facility is operated.
Okay.
And then I did want to add a quick 2 things to kind of clarify. The applicant discussed precedents for this. I just wanted to highlight what those properties were. The 2 from the last year. One was located near Quinn and Siphon Road. I believe it was 0.09 acres to be more consistent with the development of that proposal. I'm not sure what development went in there, but the adjacent zoning to the north was also residential high density. And it was, I believe, under the same owner. The other one you recently had before you was submitted by Dave Packer over near Hawthorne Road, Hawthorne and Quinn. That was a contract rezoned to residential high density, and I do believe that the applicant reduced the density at the time of their final application. Still zoned residential high density, but with conditions on the density. The other thing, length of stay. That is addressed by the applicant in their house handbook, page 19, I believe. Page 19, I believe, is the second bullet point under the residential agreement. If I may paraphrase or kind of skip to it, I understand that I do not work toward, if I do not work toward completing my plan or do not follow rules or follow facility rules, I will lose BMH services and housing for a minimum of 6 months. It's kind of stating how they would maintain that residential tenancy longer than 30 days.
Okay. Any questions? More? Okay, Roger, you had...
No, I just think we're ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you guys one question.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. This is, let's see, I need to close it?
Can I ask Ed another question?
Who?
Can I ask Ed another question?
Ed, we have another question, it sounds like.
Sorry. Okay, as I read through all of your material that you submitted, you've indicated that unruly and violent behavior will not be tolerated from the residents at Big Mama's house. But I also saw in this packet a whole manual on dealing with it. In the staff safety manual, you've got a discussion of aggressive residents that says don't challenge them, don't call their bluff, don't demand obedience. You are familiar with the thing I'm talking about. So can you explain to me how you can do that while also ensuring your strict rules about no TV, limited visitors, swearing, smoking, curfew, vehicle towing, all of that?
Right. It isn't going to be easy, I guess would be the best way to put it. And each instance that something like that, an unruly person happens, is going to have to be, I guess, guided by the situation at that time, so that if the manager, the house manager there feels threatened, or that that person is going to be physically threatening, then it's over. On the other hand, if that person, if the manager feels like the discussion is going in the right direction, that there's going to be progress made, then that discussion will continue. I don't know how, don't know how else to take it go forward. There's
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Council, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there any other questions before I close the public hearing? Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. Council, this item's before you. How do you wish to proceed?
Before anybody makes any motions, I would be very interested to hear discussion from the other council members and hear their thoughts. And
that's what we're doing here. So. We're looking for any discussion, council, some thoughts, what you're thinking. Okay. Anyone? Council, your thoughts? What are you thinking?
I wish I was Solomon. Have the wisdom to deal with this.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll make one comment. I mean, this is just an incredibly difficult situation because there's valid points on both sides. And the one thing that many have said here tonight, but also in the many emails we received, was that almost everybody without exception agrees that there's a need for the facility. But the question is the location. But as Ed pointed out, what location is not going to be a problem for somebody. So The difficulty for us is, you know, eventually, what location do we pick that isn't going to be a problem for somebody? So it's a really, I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but it's a very tough situation with both sides have valid arguments.
Well, Linda, I really agree with what you're saying, but we have a neighborhood here that will be changed. And I think we have a responsibility to find another location.
Thoughts?
I'm going to step. I wish that we could reason together, but our quasi-judicial role puts us in a position to not even enter discussion until it's before us. I got to come clean here. My first entry into any political foray in Pocatello came because the council turned down a request for a limited transitional housing thing, 4 units. And it was going to be very well supervised, but they turned it down. And so I did some research and found out people who weren't supervised up and down that street were more problematic than the people that were going to be supervised. But the other side of that was it was a fourplex and it was for families, which was a little more secure than individuals. And it limited the impact by being a fourplex. And so coming out like on that, I really do believe that they're on the right track with regard to apartment complexes. When they were before us, whatever it was, that was a thing I discovered in all of the research I did, was that to have apartment complexes was to really up the ante in terms of successfulness in dealing with people who were in transition in their lives. So that said, somewhere we got to get past the not in my backyard syndrome, because that's not getting people well. All we're doing is accelerating illness in our community, and that illness comes in many forms. So I'm saying that what I see in part of this tonight is there's a great fear, and a lot of that fear comes because of the unknown. And regardless of who presented what, I don't see the fear being met with, there's confidence in one or two people, but there's not confidence in a plan that can be studied and looked at. And so I'm kind of at that crossroad right now, because what do I vote for if I vote to do this? It's not well defined. It's a lot of well-meaning things. And I know that there's a scripture that says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the confidence in things unseen. So I know that as well. But I really think the absence of the plan is a critical element here, because we can't, until that plan is put forth, and it is comprehensive, it's detailed. It's going to have to be somewhat ambiguous at points, because that's the way plans are too. They got to be flexible. But I really just don't see how we get two groups together with them at such disparate points right now. And I don't know how you move into a community and we say go ahead when there's no plan that gives confidence. So that's where I'm coming from right now.
Any other? Go ahead.
A concern I have is that transitional housing would not have the requirement of length of stay, but it's only permitted in a commercial location. So in order for it to be permitted in a residential location, it has to fall under group living supervised and not transitional housing. As I read through the information that's here in the packet, there are some things that seem to be inconsistent with that. There's right at the top of one page in bold letters, I understand as a resident of Big Mama's house, I have the right to exit at any time. That doesn't seem like a group support, supervised living. That seems more like.
Seems contradictory, whatever contractor would be. But it may meet some HIPAA laws.
It would?
Might meet some HIPAA laws.
Oh.
Where you can't restrict people completely. I don't know.
So before we go further, I first of all want to thank the community. This is awesome to have you involved and have you so patient and so kind and just listening to both sides. It's nice to see that because it could be a whole other situation. And so I want you to know that I really appreciate you as a community on both sides. I'm going to kind of ask just the opposite thing that Roger has asked about a plan. I see a plan that has been coming together, but they've been criticized because we don't know what the plan looks like. It sounds like, from what Ed was saying, they're trying to meet the needs of a neighborhood and doing everything they can to be in the middle of that neighborhood and be a good neighbor, and which is going to change your plan occasionally just simply because of that. And so I would hate to say, well, they don't have a plan and it's not working and it's not very good, when I think, from what I understand, is they're trying to figure out how to embrace the neighborhood and how to have the neighborhood embrace them as well, and the Big Mama's house. And so I don't want to just kind of pass that off as, oh yeah, they're unorganized, they don't know what they're doing. I think that they do. They're trying the best.
I think their plan, in terms of its mission and its purpose, has really come together. The direction they've taken in terms of apartments versus housing, that's a big step forward. But the plan needs to have some meat to it in terms of budget, expenses, how they're going to generate income, because a lot of grants are leveraged grants where you've got to be able to have your own skin in the game as well as get the money from these entities. Now, not all grants are that way, but a lot of them are. You've got to have your own skin in the game. And, I don't know how much skin they've got in the game right now because it didn't show up anywhere here anywhere. We don't know what their projected expenses are. We don't know what their projected staff will be. What's referred to in one place, we're going to have security, but then we find that was added in to help the residents. We read another place that they can only do so much because of economy of scale. Does economy of scale then trump that part of the plan? And I can't answer that because that's the organization that has to answer that. And they've got to bring something that is, in my estimation, is much more tangible. I think Pocatello has this need. It's a big need here. And I think everybody here agrees that it's a need. It's just, how do we meet that need and how do we address that need? And I find a neighborhood right here that is skeptical because they don't find the tangibleness of the plan to address a lot of the anxiety they have. Somewhere, we've got to get that together, and we can't do that.
I guess what I'm saying is when I listened to the neighborhood, the budget wasn't their concern. It was a lot of other concerns.
But
and the Big Mama's house was trying to meet all of those concerns And so I recognize, and I don't disagree that you've got to have a budget and you've got to understand what that is. But there was a lot of concern, and then also I will just state that, what everybody else has stated really is it's definitely a need. We have a need in our community for a transitional home. There's no question. Everybody says it. That's it. Where do we put it? Where does it fit? Well, we know in a commercial zone it doesn't fit because we possibly have something coming back to us there, possibly. If it does, then that will tell us in a commercial zone it doesn't fit. In a residential zone it doesn't fit. So where does it fit? In the community. And for the neighborhood and everybody, this council has been struggling on what to do with this. This is not, I will tell you, I don't know that I've seen the council go through something this hard, and we've gone through a couple of us have gone through some pretty tough things. This is a hard decision to make because it does affect people's lives on both ends of it. So,
Mayor, you mentioned that it may not fit in a commercially zoned place, but just because a couple of people are opposed to that doesn't mean the whole council feels that it would be inappropriate in commercial zoning.
Oh, I'm not saying the council thinks it's inappropriate. I'm just using it as an example. There are people.
Be appropriate in commercial zoning.
Maybe, but you're still going to have the same meeting in a commercial zone that we're having tonight as we are in a residential zone. Is what I'm
probably
speculating. Speculating, I guess, is what it is. So that's just me speaking out of turn, probably.
Well, and the part I look at is the planning and zoning. When they went through all their iterations, the thing that changed them from a tie to a pass was the last condition. And had I been at that meeting and was one of the persons that was involved there, and that's what broke the tie, I would see that as a game breaker if I didn't address it. And so when I look at the plan, I don't find a sufficient response. Okay? I don't find that determined plan that Resolute makes as that's the adjective used. I don't find that determined plan, dynamic plan there. And I just feel like, I wish we could weigh in and find a way to get more reasoning going and stuff. But
unfortunately, state statute doesn't
let us, to where we could maybe allay some of the concerns or something like that. But the way it's set up, it doesn't let us be the mediators of that. We have to decide it straight up. And right now, I don't find that the condition that was supposed to be delivered to us tonight was met by what they decided. And I know that whatever else we decided, if the plan, we felt confident in it, and we passed it, we still have a bunch of mad people. but I wish there were a way we could let this gel for a little while longer, but I don't think it's fair to everybody that's lived with the angst of what's going to happen. So I've said all I'm going to say.
God. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, is there any other discussion? I mean, we can have a motion and then discuss more. Do you have any discussion down there on that end before a motion?
No.
Okay.
Well, I have another just concern.
Okay.
Maybe someone can help me out with this that is prepared to vote on a motion. But at the end of Mr. Snell's presentation, he said, if we believe that Big Mama's House is honest about what it is they're presenting, so group supervised living, not transitional housing, and if we believe the city can enforce it, I have some concerns about our ability to enforce it. We struggle to enforce a lot of things. So maybe somebody can help me out with that concern.
Enforce the zoning and the...
Enforce all of the rules and things that have been stated by Big Mama's House, how can we as a city, I mean, if it comes that we approve this and
how do we guarantee
down the road that's not what's happening, people aren't staying for 6 months, problems are happening, how do we enforce that? That's going to be a real challenge for the city. It would have to, you know, it'd have to come back to revoke the conditional use permit, and then you've got apartments that are sitting there that can't be used. You know, I mean,
how do we deal with that with other facilities?
That's a concern I have.
What about existing facilities? How do we?
I think existing facilities, if the condition is put on them, that we would have to react and act the way it says that we're going to.
But that's my question, is has that been an issue with previous facilities? I understand this one's different, but
I don't know.
Do we have this issue of?
We haven't in 10 years or whatever, and I'm not sure before that, but
we've done it where somebody let it expire.
Oh,
you know, we've done some things like that.
Where a zoning issue is expired, yeah, but they hadn't actually built the building.
Or they hadn't done what they said they were going to do. We've had to go back and
yeah, but I guess what the question is what do we do when they build the building, they start, 8 months later, we've got a problem. Now we've got to evict it, and we've got to overturn that. And
Not about the zoning issue, but like all the things that they say that this facility is going to do. If they don't do them, then how does the city handle that?
Isn't that part of a CUP thing, or is that a zoning issue, or what is that?
Well, it would be part of the conditions that are placed not only on the contract rezone if it were to occur, but also on the conditional use permit, correct? And there would be remedies built into that, but there would be some, it would be a very complicated document to create in order to be able to enforce, as Councilwoman Adams, you mentioned.
Mr. Mayor, could we ask planning and zoning staff if they've had to address this in the past?
Sure.
They have more experience.
We surely can. I know.
So just for some clarification, is the question a question of enforcement of the conditions added to the contract rezone and the subsequent CUP?
Yeah.
So we do not have something like this application that we can point to. However, we do have a project that had obtained a conditional use permit to follow a certain set of rules, which it had been reported through our code enforcement process that it was not abiding by those rules, and we went through the code enforcement process to bring that project in compliance. It is for a different use. This is a recent application that staff has recently enforcing the conditions of a conditional use permit. And initially, or earlier, I pointed out some of the standards that we do have in our section of our contract rezone, which does address whether or not an application is in compliance with this contract rezone. And that's back under that section, basically, where if they're not in compliance, then we would hold a public hearing, and they would, to summarize, they would essentially have to bring it into compliance, or an ordinance could be pursued to revert it back to its original zoning.
It'd be similar to when somebody builds something that they didn't get the permit and we tell them to tear it down.
It's possible, and a condition could be added as a surety.
What I'm saying is there are different ways we enforce things. And sometimes people build a fence that shouldn't have been placed where it was, or
And the fence either needs to be moved or have to be brought into compliance.
So that's how they work. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we deny the rezone request.
Council President Johnson, could you add just some reasoning for that? And that could be reasoning as simple as based on the record that's been presented tonight, or the discussion of council, something like that. It just needs to have some sort of reasoning.
Based on a lack of preparation for this project, and based on the testimony that has been given both written and oral.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Is there any other discussion before we vote on that?
I have a comment to make.
Okay.
I would like to publicly thank Pastor Thomas and also the board members of Big Mama's House and everyone who has been in support of trying to help people who are less fortunate in our community. You are to be commended for that, and so I wish to express my appreciation to you for that. This is a very, very hard, tough decision for us, and the council has to follow our established rules for zoning, and we have to make sure that if we're going to change the zoning, that the proposed use would be consistent with what the rules are, and that we were 100% sure that this would be a group living situation and not a transitional housing situation. So that's an issue that I've got to look at, and I'm grateful to you for this. Just know that that's something that we have to consider.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
One of the things that I think we have to take into account, they've worked really hard to address a problem in our community, really hard. They're staffed by volunteers, and volunteers can't get things done as efficiently in a short amount of time, and they've been really trying to press the clock, so to speak. The other thing I think needs to be said is that somewhere we're going to have to address this as this community. And I think the only way we can do that is collectively as a community, we look at what the plan needs to be, and it becomes more ironclad, because that's the only way confidence is built. I see several steps have been taken since the last time they were before us. And I think they're on the right track. Unfortunately, it came to a head tonight about a place in a neighborhood. And I think the response by the neighbors said that this is not something that we feel we want to embrace. And so somewhere we've got to find a way to, I don't think we'll ever get everybody to want to go embrace it, but we've got to find a way to get a better support system going for wherever this ends up. It's got to end up somewhere in Pocatello. So we've got to figure out how to do that as a community, and I don't have a crystal ball to look in, but I just know that the plan will make a big difference, because people can change, and the confidence has to be in the plan, as it will carry forward for years. And that's the thing I think people, I know Ed's put a lot of time into it, and he's confident in it, but I think people are also saying, what happens when Ed's out of the way? What happens when he's not there? So somewhere the plan has got to develop. What happens when Jackie's not there? Those are the type of things. The plan has to be solid enough that people have a confidence, not in people, but in the operation.
Let me add to that. I hope this isn't the last time we see Big Mama's House in front of this council. Don't give up.
I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to because I can, I guess. There are, and I'm not sure exactly how the council's going to vote, and so, I mean, honestly, I've seen them change in 3 seconds. They've changed their mind, and so. But I do want to once again just thank you for everything, your time and for your patience and stuff. I also want people to recognize that Councilman Bray stated something that there's a lot of volunteer time that has been put into this. Don't hate the volunteers. Not only have they volunteered their time, I'm pretty confident that it's cost them all professionally a lot of money. Personally, it's not like we're just going to do this and everybody's going to forget about it. And so don't forget that either, because they've been as respectful and helpful as everybody else too. So this is I'm really pretty proud of this community that hasn't just gone nuts over this, and I'm pretty proud of Big Mama's House that hasn't gone nuts and started pointing fingers. And it's a great project. In my mind, it's a great project. So with that, I'm going to ask Connie to call the roll.
Johnston?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lorick?
My vote's a moot point. So I'm going to say no.
Okay. Thank you. Then it passes with a 4-1 vote. Thank you very much again for your time tonight. Thank you for your efforts. We will, what? Okay, hold on. Hold on, just a minute. The motion passed. So the motion was to deny, so don't get mad and everything like that. The motion was to deny, and the motion passed, and so that is what happened. So thank you. I'm sorry. Hold on. Yes, and if you don't mind, it's late. We have a lot of people, so when we adjourn the meeting, if you can exit as quickly as possible, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.